this was.
Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? I've got a few things in this top corner, but they're just continuing.
Yeah, is Jeff here? No. Okay, he might, if Jeff was here, I was gonna take that RDA for Egypt Beach, but not, then we just go into,
Okay.
public hearings or anything quickly we could do.
So we are going to continue, just so anybody here in the room doesn't waste their time, we're going to continue, is it well 17A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to get continued. 190 Glades Road is going to be continued. 97 Edward Foster, change in the agenda.
Is that going to be continued too? 97?
Yes,
Okay.
we
Okay,
have a request to continue that,
okay.
but we're gonna open it. and
Yeah, no,
continue
it's
it.
just for the public.
So, 87 Glades Road,
Oh,
what do you want to do first?
let's make a motion to accept the agenda
Let's do that.
as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good evening.
We have 6:20.
How are you tonight?
I think that clock's a little slow.
All right.
We're okay.
So for the record, my name is James Garfield, an engineer at Morse Engineering. Here tonight to represent Doris Prairie for the notice of intent for the proposed apartment building and associated septic system at 87 Glades Road. So as the site currently sits, we've got a 4-unit, 8-bedroom apartment building. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it's under the proposed building here. And that building is currently serviced by 3,000-gallon pipe tank to the rear of the lot. In terms of resource areas on this site, we fall in a FEMA flood zone AE elevation 15. The existing building has a first floor elevation of 10.2, and we're raising up the proposed building onto piles. It's going to have a first floor of 18, 3 feet above the FEMA flood zone. And we're also converting it to a 3-unit, 6-bedroom apartment building.
Did we open this before?
Yes, we had a presentation. I can't remember why we made them.
We were just waiting for Board of Health approval.
Okay.
We did this one I just want to make sure I wasn't supposed to
Yeah,
read something on
and
this.
Architectural Review Board was
Okay.
also on
Got it.
thing, but those boards are all set.
Yeah, if that's the case. We've been approved by the ZBA, the planning board, as well as the Board of Health at this point.
Yeah, that's what we were waiting for.
Yeah.
I knew it was something minor.
Okay, I wasn't aware that we had presented it, but,
Yes.
okay.
We should be good then, right?
Yeah, well, with all that.
I didn't want to ruin this day.
Right. That really ruins his day with okay.
We got 4 minutes.
did all of this. I'm like, wait a minute, I know I've heard this before.
That's okay, you can, if you have any questions,
No, I think we were good. We were waiting on,
yeah, the
Board
Board
of
of
Health.
Health, that's all we were. Yeah.
tell the boys back at the office that you knocked that one off in 2 minutes.
I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
606 CJC, athletic track and fields.
Okay, Tim Power with PBI Site Design and for the fields behind the high school. Just coming in for a continuation, been through drainage review with the peer reviewer and whatnot.
So where are we with that?
We were just waiting for the review, I thought.
We were, so there was some back and forth, and Merrill did give what I believed to be the final sign off.
Yeah,
It also was in front of the planning board.
right.
And they had some comments too, which they had further addressed and will be brought into decision pertaining to stormwater. But one of the conditions is that it rely on the stormwater review that we're doing as part of this.
So is,
It's-
our stormwater's done, right?
Yes.
So they are, I think, good to go unless somebody has a question here.
I have one other thing to present, but before it's a little bit not quite this focused, so if there's any other questions on this part of the field, then I'll take those first, then I'll sort of present what a small change to something off the field,
Well,
so.
we need that before we
Yep.
get close.
No, that's fine, I just want to make sure if there's any other questions on the major field complex.
I don't think so. I mean, anybody have any, we've kind of knocked this around the
Yeah,
last
you've
meeting
been
pretty thoroughly.
Knocking around.
Yep. So, something came up in the design process. Let me just get my bearings. So this is the parking lot, the football field, and the 2 new turf fields, and then there's a field off here. They're looking to take down the lights from this field and move them to this field. And so we took a look at that quickly. That's this aerial here. So this is the last proposed new field, and this is the other field up here. We don't have very detailed survey on this part. Our wetland line ends here, and you can see on, I don't know how well you can see in there, but it's a light bulb here, 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 here. So there's one that falls inside of the buffer zones. Very limited impact.
One light.
One light pole, so the only work we need to be done is excavation for the footing, put the footing in, put it back, all in disturbed areas along the way, so.
Right, that looks like it's already turf where.
Yes, it's already grass, it's already disturbed, access would be through over areas, so. I know it's a late ask, something came up, so I wanted to present it. If it's something that can be added as part of this order, that would be great. If not, we'll find another way to add it in there, but it's very, very limited. We can certainly extend our erosion controls all the way around outside of that issue.
It's just relocating the poles?
That's it?
One pole.
Well, there's, so
Six to be
now
relocated, but
that
only
field is
one.
going to be lit where it wasn't illuminated before.
No, right.
Correct.
There's no neighbors in that area to be affected by the lights?
No human neighbors.
Correct.
There was something I read about lighting that altered the mating pattern of some.
They're not gonna leave the lights on all night though.
Yeah, that was a good point. This is a parking lot where it's,
It's not gonna be all night, so they will have their privacy time.
A little punchy here tonight.
Yeah,
He's got to fairly early this
The
morning.
animals have their privacy.
Cooped up inside all day.
Well, I didn't know if you might want to jump in on that, but I guess nobody else has heard that or read that.
It's
so-
bats.
Bats?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not all night. That's the whole thing. If the lights were on all night, yeah, I'd object to it. Because I was thinking what you just said, all the animals. but then-
I did read, I honestly did read that somewhere, but.
Yeah, well, I didn't, I just was thinking, is this gonna bother me?
I don't see a problem with this.
It's not on all night, and the noise from the game will keep them scattered. When the lights go out and it's quiet, they can,
Let's go out in
But
Georgia.
wait a minute, but you're moving it out of the buffer, right?
no, we're moving the light poles that are on the field today. We're putting brand new lights. We're taking the old ones
Oh,
and
okay.
putting them here. So these are new lights. And there's one that's within.
one that's in
the buffer.
the
Let's
buffer.
let it, we'll run through the committee, and then when we're done with the committee, we'll go to the audience. And
All right.
I don't have any questions.
Richard?
No, I'm fine. I
Okay.
don't think it's a big deal.
Jen?
I don't think so.
Amy? From the audience.
Mara Glancy, 61 Kenneth Road, also the Recreation Director for the town of Scituate. The lights he's talking about are the Reedy lights that were donated to the town. As a favor to them, we thought we would like to reuse them and at least put them in the back. That was something that was donated to the town
Yeah,
by years and years of golf tournaments because of a deceased father.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to reuse the lights for the Reedy family.
Glad they're reusing them, yeah. Anybody else? Anybody want to speak to that? I don't have a problem making that part of this project. I mean, you're in the midst of it, and so I'm assuming, though, what it means is that there's poles, but there's also trenching.
Yeah, I think it's a narrow, shallow trench just for electric
Right.
power. I mean, it's be 18 inches to 24 inches down.
Correct.
You're gonna be out there working anyway, it's not a deal.
This field wasn't planned to be altered at this time, though.
Correct. Still remain grass.
Okay. If anybody doesn't have anything, is there anything else we need to know about this? I don't think so. I think we've,
I think we have, yeah.
so I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to close.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Okay.
Right?
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You look disappointed. 109 Jericho Road. The 109 Jericho Road opened last meeting. I didn't, I know a little bit about it, but
I'm trying to remember where we left off with.
There was outstanding stormwater review.
There weren't a lot of questions on it, other than
why don't you take this one, Richard?
What's the previous one? We already closed it, so.
The school.
So,
This stuff?
James, where did we leave off?
Yeah, so in the
I'll
last
get on it.
meeting, I presented this to you guys, knowing that we still had to address the review comments from Merrill. And so basically, we submitted the revisions to Merrill on last Monday. Merrill we submitted with Merrill last Monday as well as the town. Merrill got back to us late Friday, and they had a very minor revision to the HydroCAD we submitted, which we again revised and submitted back with the town and Merrill this morning. Merrill has since signed off on it, which they emailed the town.
No, I don't have it.
I have it right here.
Oh,
We'd
okay,
like to
but I
see it.
didn't get it.
Deb said she emailed it to you. So,
Yeah, but even if she did, there hasn't been a chance to review it.
okay, well, so it was a very minor change. It didn't affect the results of the HydroCAD. It did not change the plan whatsoever from what we submitted last Monday. And the stormwater system itself hasn't really changed since the last meeting. It was more minor detail notes that they had us revise for the most part. So,
I've looked at it briefly, but
You would need to see that anyway, right, to have a chance to review it?
Well, if you close, it's not part of the record.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless you want to close with a copy of his email, but you're right, we haven't had a chance to look at it. I haven't seen it. Deb has, it may have gone to a different email, because I was on my email all afternoon, I didn't get anything from Deb, so.
yeah.
She may have sent it to my old Hanover address, for all I know.
Questions?
No, I don't have any
Well, there's
questions.
no email to me, though.
And she just I asked her to forward it to me. She said she emailed it to you.
Oh, so maybe she
Yeah.
got, busy or something.
But
Yeah, so, yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but,
Okay. Doug, questions?
No. No, I remember looking at this last week. So, no questions.
So we're probably going to have to continue it
okay.
until she has a chance to, what?
Do we have
Any-
neighbors for this? Any neighbors?
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to talk about 109 Jericho Road, raise rebuild?
I did speak with Greg on the chance that we would continue the stormwater, and he asked me to request that we could close the NOI portion of the submittal. because you should have enough information for that portion of it.
Any reason we couldn't?
The only peril to that would be if the stormwater wasn't accepted, and then they had to make changes to the stormwater on the plan, like drainage or
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, you could always amend it, but
Yeah, and we incorporate all the documents submitted into that order, so I would say you should just leave it open. I mean, you could, yeah, that's what I would recommend.
The reality, though, it'll be just like your last hearing. It's just subject to reviewing. We don't have any other questions, right?
Correct.
Just subject to reviewing Merrill's recommendations and,
That got to us late.
right.
That's what's tough. I know it's small. I don't.
So we're just waiting on the review comments from Merrill.
We have them, but they haven't had a chance to review them, and we have all sorts of
Yeah, they-
deadlines for stuff.
We're supposed to be sent today, but, so our deadline is a week before, so this happened within the last week. So, I mean, and you all also get to review all of this too.
Make a motion to continue March 18th at 6:20.
second on that?
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No worries.
All right, so, Tack Factory Pond, well, 17A,
Need a motion to move.
town has asked to reschedule that to March 5th.
March 18th, maybe?
March 5th? That's tomorrow.
18th, yeah.
18th.
I guess this was the old email,
Yeah.
to March 18th.
Okay.
Sorry.
I make a
It's the second page of that email.
motion to continue Tack Factory Pond to March 18th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
58 Greenwald Road, septic and grading.
Okay, so this one was also presented at the last hearing. You guys wanted to know if Board of Health had approved it yet, which they hadn't at that point. They have now. And the only change that we made to the plan since is we've added 3 conservation posts along the existing tree line.
Which I think we asked for.
Yeah, so.
Kenny?
I don't have any questions.
Doug?
Not really, those, the posts, they're wood posts. What do we do, put a plaque on those of some sort?
Yeah.
Is that along,
Tells them don't go in front. It's conservation area.
so that demarks which, a particular zone, or is it just
Can't go further
a
back.
limit that we're setting on this construction site?
No, it denotes conservation restricted area beyond the posts. So on
Yeah.
this particular one, they're within the buffer because it's already disturbed. So this is,
So we're not necessarily demarking like the 50-foot,
No, no, on each
No.
individual
That was my
project,
question. Okay.
yeah.
Each
It could-
individual project, okay. I just-
based on,
on the limit of work and
Yes.
whatever's proposed, so.
Correct.
All
And
right,
what's already
gotcha.
there.
All right,
right, because on this particular one, they are in the 50 just slightly with their grading, I believe.
yeah. Okay, now I've just clarification for educating me, that's all. All right.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
So, yeah, no other questions.
Amy, anything else you want to add to that?
No, and that plan, the revised plan was provided to us the day after the last meeting, so we're good with that deadline.
Okay. Anybody in the audience? Good.
I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please just continue to.
190 Glades Road, the applicant's requested continuation to March 18th.
I make a motion that we continue.
Second.
Wait a minute.
190.
190 Glades Road to March 18th at 6:20.
Second.
You did.
Second. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
663 Hadley Road, Hadley Country Club Irrigation System, Pond Ridge. On March 4th, 2019, at 6:25 PM, the Town Hall Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Hadley Country Club for the irrigation supply system improvement project to increase irrigation water storage capacity by dredging and enlarging an existing irrigation water storage pond and construction of a new pump house. They're also proposing to install a liner in the pond to reduce saltwater intrusion. Small-scale package desalinization plant will be installed in the pump house to improve the quality of water being delivered to the irrigation system on property located at 663 Hadley Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. I am Bill Arnberger. I'm here on behalf of Hadley Country Club. I also have Alex Patterson, a wetland scientist from ESS Group. And just a brief overview before I turn over to Alex is we filed this NOI a long time ago, but it was held in suspension. We were waiting for the state to go through the MEPA process, and they issued a certificate for it. And so at that juncture, we moved forward to activate it with that. So a certificate there, and I think some of the commission members and Amy were out there during the MEPA review some time ago. And on February 14th, Art Allen was out there and with Alex, and I was there because everyone else was on vacation. And just in case anyone had any questions. But in a nutshell, what this is all about, it really is a water conservation project. Already, it's about 90% complete. There was a determination to replace the old sprinkler system, which is basically because the technology is probably going to save 35 or 40% of the water used for irrigation. And this is the additional steps, namely, because of the proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, there is a salinity content in the water. So to the extent that the salinity is too high, that's why the desalinization plant. And we're also seeking with a larger detention basin to capture a lot of the drainage and water. And basically, it's a water-friendly project is we're at right now. And I know that Art Allen issued a commentary, a letter of which Alex will go over. I know it just got back a short time ago, but I think we're in good stead. But Alex, why don't I turn it over to you?
Sure. So, as Bill mentioned, the overall goal of the project is to improve the irrigation system at Hatherley Country Club with the goal of conserving water and improving the quality of the irrigation water used at the course. The project has two primary phases. The first phase is really to improve the quantity of water available for irrigation, and that would be accomplished through deepening and making larger an existing artificially created basin in the southern part of the course. So when I say deepening, that entails dredging of the existing pond footprint. And when I say expanding, that would entail excavating material from existing upland adjacent to the pond to make the overall footprint of the pond larger. So this work would entail the removal of approximately 13,250 cubic yards of material. Some of that is within the existing pond basin. Again, some of it is soil that's adjacent to the existing pond to make the overall footprint larger. This work would also entail installation of a liner in the pond to essentially prevent saltwater intrusion through the groundwater, as well as retain the water within the pond for storage, as well as construction of a new pump house and associated piping on the northern side of the pond. The dredged and excavated material would be stockpiled adjacent to the pond and allowed to dewater, and then transported to the driving range on the northern part of the course for use as landscaping material. And this work would increase the overall capacity of the pond from about 750,000 gallons to a little over 1 million gallons, which is the goal of the course. So that's the quantity side. On the quality side, we're talking about the installation of a small, customized package desalinization system within the new pump house building. that would be constructed on the northern side of the pond, as I mentioned. The desalination system would receive water from the existing wells on the property, go through a reverse osmosis process, and then discharge the water into the basin for storage until it's needed for irrigation, at which time it would be pumped out through the new pump house system. The desalination system would create a discharge, which would be discharged to a level lip spreader adjacent to Musquashnet Brook on the southern part of the course. The desal system would be capable of processing up to 144,000 gallons of water per day and producing 14,400 gallons of discharge per day, so a 90% recovery. The discharge would be flushed from the system in approximately 170,000 gallon increments every 15 to 20 minutes. I'm sorry, did I say 1,000? I meant 170 gallon increments. And the salinity of the discharge would be set automatically not to exceed the salinity of the receiving water, which is about 26 parts per thousand. In terms of resource areas, as I mentioned, the overall dredging and excavation footprint is about just shy of 36,000 square feet within the land underwater, and about 14,000 square feet within the buffer zone. So when you add those two together, the new pond footprint will be, or new basin footprint will be approximately 50,000 square feet in size. So an increase of about maybe a quarter of an acre more than what it is now. Of the just over 13,000 cubic yards of material that would be removed, about 8,000 cubic yards would be dredged from the existing footprint of the basin, and about a little over 5,000 cubic yards would be excavated from the upland adjacent to the basin. So again, a total of just over 13,000 cubic yards. The work would also address the extensive growth of Phragmites around the pond. If you've been out there, you know there's a dense wall of Phragmites encircling the entire basin. This would be removed and replaced with native low-grown shrubs to enhance both habitat value and aesthetics of the course. Small temporary disturbance of the riverfront area and buffer zone associated with the work, but these areas would be restored to pre-existing conditions, which are primarily maintained golf course turf. As Bill mentioned, the project's received its MEPA certificate. Once the Conservation Commission process is concluded, we'll also be requesting Section 401 water quality cert from DEP, CZM consistency, as well as NIPD's approval through DEP and the EPA. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Would you mind rolling down the page, just giving the idea of where the pond?
So just sort of an overview. The course is located on both sides of Gannett Road. The pond is about here. This is Musquashnet Pond and Brook. So the existing basin is here. This is the southern half of the golf course. And then the driving range, which is the material reuse area, is located here in sort of the northern part of the course there. So this is the 8th tee box. So it's roughly located between the 8th and 9th fairways. Scaled back contours, you can see the existing pond footprint about there, and then the new footprint extend primarily to the southeast. It's basically this area that we added to the footprint of the basin.
Do you know where that is on the golf course?
Mhm.
No.
Hey Frank, so just because of the atypical nature of this project,
Mhm.
I have Art here tonight, and before we go through the commission, I'd like to have him speak to what some of the things we should be considering when we review this project, and then maybe go down the line.
Great idea. If I'd known that was Mr. Allen there, I would have picked his brain a little bit more about the lights.
I just interjected briefly. Art Allen from Ecotech, wetland scientist and peer review consultant for this project. As Amy mentioned, I was out, performed a review, actually was out here on February 14th of this year, back when Scituate didn't look like winter wonderland. It was bone dry when we walked the site, cold but dry. We walked both the pond, around the pond, the vicinity of the desalinization plant, and then we went over and we took a look at the proposed discharge to the brook, and then we went over and looked at the dredge disposal and reuse area. I'm in agreement with all of the resource area identification and designations that they presented. I had just a question. My comments are dated February 19th, provided through Amy to the commission. My first comment, I just had a question. There seem to be some discrepancies on the areas and volume of pond excavation and dredging, and Alex clarified that pretty well, just explaining that in some places they call the whole thing dredging, but part of it's dredging, part of it's excavation of salt that enlarge the pond, but it appears that the numbers that were presented in the notice of intent are accurate, and that's fine with that explanation. Point 2 is just agreement to with the resource area designations. Point 3, I addressed specifically the pond impacts. Again, I agree that it is a pond resource area. It has bank and it has land under water associated with it. And they're proposing, well, obviously, pretty extensive alterations, essentially wiping out the existing bank and land under water in the pond, and in order to expand that pond. I do agree that the existing invasive Phragmites that dominates the bank does not provide valuable habitat. It would be a benefit to eliminate that Phragmites, particularly where they're talking about native shrub restoration plantings. We discussed that on the site. There were some comments also in the NEPA certificate regarding suggesting some restoration be done. I fully agree with that, and I assume you're going to show that on some kind of a plan going forward, what they're proposing for shrub restoration. My other concern is the land under water, and I requested that they provide me the sediment logs from their investigation of the pond bottom, which they did, and they show between like a half a foot and a foot of organic or organic enriched sediment in the land under water. And I mean, typically that's where the habitat value in the land underwater lies, is in that organic sediment. Right now they're essentially just proposing to take that out and move that to the driving range. I assume probably use that, as a surface material, as a topsoil, or create topsoil with it. So they're going to put back a liner in the pond. I noticed there was a response to my comments today that I read through briefly, but essentially, from what I read, Alex is saying that that the impact to the land or water will be temporary, and it'll eventually basically restore itself. I mean, I think if you find that there's value in that, that existing sediment, I mean, it presents, it provides, overwintering feed forage for, typically any number of reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates that use that sediment in a pond, in any pond. I mean, I think they should do more in terms of, restoring that land underwater. I mean, potentially stockpile and reuse that sediment. I mean, in a lot of cases, depending on the type of liner they use, they need to cover the liner with something anyway, and potentially, they could cover the liner with, with some of that stockpiled sediment. I also mentioned just, it's a little bit of a catch-22 situation. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the definition of pond in the regulations, 310 CMR 10. Lined impervious artificial basins are not considered resource areas. They're technically exempt from regulations. So if they create this, potentially they're creating a basin that is no longer a resource area, no longer regulated. So that's why I say it's a little bit of a catch-22, because if you find there's value, habitat value in the land underwater, even if you require them to restore it, they're restoring something, if they restore it as a lined basin, they're restoring something that in the future will potentially not be regulated. So I didn't see that in any of the comments from MIPA or DEP or Ecological Restoration, any of those folks, but it's just an issue that I wanted to bring up to the Commission's attention. I thought, I took a look at the bylaw, thinking that maybe the bylaw doesn't have that exemption, but the bylaw basically seems to say where the definitions are not present, they defer to the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. So I think potentially that exemption would apply. So just something for you to think about. I also recommended that when they dewater the pond to prepare for dredging, that they dewater using some type of a floating device, so they're dewatering from the top of the water column where the water is less turbid, as opposed to, just dropping a hose in the bottom, you're pulling out sediment and turbid water, and they have to discharge, treat that water and discharge it to a wetland. So if they just have some type of floating device, which Alex acknowledged, that would improve the quality of the water and help prevent, impacts when they're discharging, they're dewatering. The only other thing I mentioned, my comment number 5, was out by the driving range. The cart path going into the driving range where they're going to do dredge disposal, it crosses an intermittent stream that wasn't identified on the plan. That gravel access road, it had some erosion on it when we were out there the other day. I think that could potentially get worse, and I just recommended that they show the stream on the plan and extend their erosion controls down along that access road to protect the stream when they're going in and out of there. They have erosion controls around the whole disposal area, driving range now. That's what they're proposing, but if they just extend those down, I think they'll be able to protect that stream during the project. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Could I respond to those?
Sure.
I know, Art, you mentioned that you only received this response today. So I understand you didn't have much time to review it. We received Art's comments on Wednesday of last week and provided a response on Friday. So I apologize that the Commission may not have had much time to review them, but just quickly, His first comment regarding the dredge volumes, I think we've covered. If there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to explain that further, but it's sort of laid out in our response. Second comment about resource area impacts, not really a response needed there. In terms of Art's third comment, we are proposing planting shrubs around the bank of the basin, as well as replacing a thin layer of organic material in the pond, as you recommended.
Do we have a plan for that?
We don't, because that wasn't proposed until a couple days ago.
Okay.
But I think the idea is, in terms of the planting plan, we can provide some additional details there in terms of species and quantities. In terms of the sort of replacement of organic sediments in the basin after dredging, as Art mentioned, there's, for a pond that's about 9 feet deep at the most, it actually has a relatively thin organic layer. It's only about 6 to 12, maybe a little more inches. So we can stockpile that material and see how much we end up with at the end. And I would assume, at least, obviously the pond's going to be larger, so there's kind of less material to go around, but I'd assume at least 6 inches. But the other sort of point in general is, as with any dredging project, there's sort of a clock that starts ticking the moment you're done, because as algae and plants and animals grow and die and decompose in the pond, it starts to build up that organic layer slowly over time again, which is why ponds with a lot of organic activity need to be dredged on a regular basis to maintain them as open water. But anyway, we're in agreement with his comments, and I think those mitigation measures, if you will, while the new basin may not technically be a resource area, I think we would argue functionally there's really no loss of wetland functions or values that would be provided, that are provided now that wouldn't be in the future. I think the main concern was just the organic material providing overwintering habitat for turtles and whatnot, and I think by replacing some of that material, we'll be maintaining that function of the area. And then regarding the dewatering, in the comment letter, I just said we would instruct the contractor to use the devices recommended, and regarding the intermittent stream under the road near the disposal area, we can revise the plans to show that, as well as erosion and sediment controls in those areas.
Thank you. Penny?
No, I really don't have any questions. I was out there for the first one with Amy and Richard and Bill, and it was very interesting, and you met all the questions, obviously, from the NEPA, was it? Yeah, and it sounds like you, all good.
Good?
Yeah, educating me again a little bit here. The water in the existing pond has a high saline level.
Yes.
So my question is then, so if you de-water that high saline water is going somewhere.
To a salt marsh.
That's going out to a salt marsh, so that causes no additional harm that way. So then if you stockpile and reuse that water, is the soil itself, that's not contaminated from the saline? To take and transport that somewhere else, does that interfere with the natural habitat life at all?
So a couple things. The sediment would be largely dewatered before it's transported, so the moisture that's holding the salinity would be, largely dewatered from the sediment before it's transported to the reuse area. The reuse area itself is relatively high elevation at the property and it's a driving range. So essentially, the idea would be to strip off the existing maintained turf in the areas where the material will be placed, place and grade the material to the desired effect, and then replace the stockpiled turf to restore it to a driving range.
So the soil itself doesn't become so contaminated, it can't be reused?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Doug, the saline issue is actually from the pumped water. There isn't water that's pumped into that right now anyhow. It's, what's happened is the well water is what contains the salt, not really what's in there.
Yeah, and I was just trying to imagine it goes up and then like, if it's a high enough salt content that.
Right, it's gonna get in the soil.
Would get in the soil, plants would have trouble growing, small creatures wouldn't live in there.
Yeah, what I'm saying, there is no water directed into this pond. The only water that's in there is just what accumulates from rainfall and natural, whatever. The desal that we're talking about is the water that's coming up, coming up out of the ground. In the nature of it, it's not an extreme salinity, but what it does is it kills leaves on trees. It makes the turf so it can't thrive.
Right,
is really
right.
what the issue is.
Okay, and that's coming from the
wells. The wells.
Well aquifers already.
Yeah, it's because what the game plan is, the well water now is going into the new pond for storage, and we want to take the extra salt out of it before it goes in there, before it is dispersed through the irrigation system.
Okay, now that all makes sense. All right, thank you. Thanks.
I'm good for now.
Good.
Jen?
All set.
Amy, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, I guess that one of the things that concerns me is related also to loss of resource area with respect to the definition of the pond.
Right.
I didn't know if maybe we could condition that to remain a resource area, or we should potentially be looking for some kind of additional buffer enhancement or mitigation for the loss of that resource area, if in fact it is considered a loss, once it's lined.
So you get that, so you take, right now you have a pond, right now you have a pond that is a resource area.
Because it isn't lined.
Well,
It's a pond.
well, because it's, whether it was man-made or whatever, at the
Yeah.
time it was constructed,
Yeah,
it's now just kind of like this area right here at the high school was
Yeah, it
created,
became
and
something, right.
so now, when you have a man-made structure, they have dealt with that so that they can be maintained, so they're no longer considered a wetland or a resource area. So you're actually removing that. I think the idea is that they're gonna plant around it and protect it, as well as, it seems like we've addressed all the pieces to make sure that it functions the same. But there would be nothing like someday that the club couldn't say, you know what, we don't like this pond here anymore, we want to do something different. I think there should be something stipulated that a portion of that, at least the wetlands that were here before, would have to be reconstructed if that were removed, or I was thinking about this, somehow, how do you address that? Maybe
Or
Bill's...
maybe they've already thought of
Well-
something that they haven't thrown out there yet for replacement or mitigation. I mean,
I mean, I think the construction of this, it seems to me like it's more beneficial, getting rid of the frags and all. I mean, I think we're all in agreement with that.
definitely.
Making a big
But-
pond, too.
Yeah.
But what we wouldn't want to have happen someday is that this, all of a sudden, they want to reconfigure the course or something like that, and they say, well, we no longer need that, we've got a different way to irrigate, so now we lose, I forget how many square feet of
The new basin is about 50,000.
well, I'm saying the old basin.
36,000.
Yeah.
So whatever the footage is of the old basin is essentially a wetland or
Right,
a resource
well,
area.
And it's the habitat within too. I
Right.
mean, we don't usually, again, talk about projects like this.
Mhm.
But, you know, when I was out there with Penny and Rich and the other people like CZM, and, you know, they seem to be pretty concerned about the benthic community and the bugs and stuff that lives in the dirt.
Well, that was a question of Art. I mean, obviously you both have looked this over and there's no endangered
Yeah.
species or anything in that anybody's really worried about that won't re-inhabit the new pond. We're not talking about a loss of anything.
It's not a seasonal habitat that we might have missed since we've only seen it in December and February.
It holds water year-round. I mean, I think something to keep in mind is, it's... you
Looks
know,
pretty,
I don't
it
wanna
doesn't look
say-
very impressive to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a man-made water feature in a golf course, surrounded by mowed turf. It's somewhat isolated as habitat.
Could be
So,
snakes.
you know, something to keep in mind. I think the concern is, you know, in the future, if this technically is not a resource area, then any, you know, future alterations wouldn't necessarily need approval from the commission. I think, you know, it's not directly answering that question, but the pond is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, so, as much of the course is, so in that sense, you know, any work in the area would still be subject to review, even though the pond itself, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that work can be done in the pond itself, but, I mean, I think what we're getting at is just, I don't see the course, you know, bringing a cement truck and filling in the pond anytime soon. It's, the whole point of the project is to...
Obviously, they're not gonna spend all this money and then fill it back in. However, as time goes by,
Can I make a suggestion, Frank?
Sure.
To try to address that? What if we put in a surviving condition in there that acknowledges that post-construction, although it is not jurisdictional as a resource area, that the club agrees to maintain, you know, a pond wetlands area of a minimum of whatever it is, 36,000 square feet, unless a new notice of intent is filed with the commission for review at that time.
'cause I mean, they may very well,
That's
let's
a great
just,
idea.
you know, another 100 years and somebody says, geez, we want this over here.
Right.
And we
so-
would not want them not to have the flexibility to be able to do
Right,
that.
so we can have a surviving condition, and I'll work with some language with Amy and Alex and Art on that, so to address that concern.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, because if it survives and you have organic material on top of the liner, it's basically going to function like a resource
Yep.
area still.
Yep.
Yeah,
As long as you
right.
protect it, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
As far as, because one of the time, and it is, as strange as this may sound, because the work gearing towards is not until late fall next year, but literally, to get a 401 water quality permit takes like 9 months. It's crazy. And that's, we don't want to miss that date. And so what my question is, I just want to find the commission is, can we condition that, in other words, the planting plan is approved by the commission, as opposed to, because what I'd like to be able to do, I understand that you cannot close the meeting tonight because there's some other things you need, but I'd like to, if at all possible, at the next meeting, in addition to closing it, to be able to vote it.
We've closed things and with a planting plan forthcoming.
Right.
Subject to approval.
That's subject to approval.
Yeah, I think. I
I
don't
think
know.
Alex should get a better way to...
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable to
We
me.
just needed it to go in the file.
Right.
So, a couple of,
We'll need the revised plans and the planting plan and then get it over to somebody who knows about plants. But we could give a condition about a planting plan, like.
Right, subject.
Planting plan itself, but I think that the plants will be.
Yeah, we would revise the
Right.
plans to show the planting plan as well as the intermittent stream that Art mentioned near the disposal
Right.
area, but I think given that those things don't really change the overall,
No.
configuration or work plan at all, if those can be conditioned to be provided subsequently, that would be,
I just got a couple more quick ones. The disposal of the Phragmites, I mean, that's just loaded with Phragmites there, and I don't think you want those Phragmites growing at the driving range. So do they have a
Bring
plan?
them to your house.
Yeah.
I think you've proposed
Yeah.
a treatment for the frag.
yeah, it may not have been included in the NOI, but that was a question that came up in the MIPA filing. So I think the plan would be basically before the pond is dewatered or dredged to go through and just cut the Phragmites at the ground surface and then take those above ground stalks and compost them at an upland location. And so that would take care of sort of the above ground biomass. One thing that we're going to run into in the dredging is there's obviously going to be a lot of rhizomes within the sediment.
Right.
So I think that the soil in the more shallower areas around the margin of the basin is going to need, which is likely to have Phragmites rhizomes, needs to be stockpiled separately from the soil that's, or the sediment that's within the deeper portions of the pond, which likely is too deep for Phragmites to grow and would not have rhizomes. For a couple reasons. One, because we don't want to spread Phragmites, but also because once the material is moved to the driving range, we want sort of a consistent, just soil that's not packed with rhizomes. So then, once that material is segregated, the material that is sort of dense rhizomes could be stockpiled at an upland location as well, and the remaining material would be used as the landscaping material at the driving range.
We just don't want those
Yeah.
shared somewhere else. I mean,
The driving range is pretty dry. It's pretty high and dry.
nothing
so-
worse than that would be, what's the name? Bamboo.
Knotweed.
Knotweed.
Oh, yeah, that's that one.
Gift that just keeps giving.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as it's addressed. And then the driving range, you've looked at the resource areas there, because I remember that driving range a long time ago was a pretty contentious project in its own right. So we're good with everything that is happening in that location.
Yeah, there was just a stream on the way in that they're going to identify and protect. Yeah, I'm in agreement with the perimeter resource areas, there's salt marsh on one side,
BVW on the other side.
freshwater BVW on the other side.
Okay. Good. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Ambitious project.
Well, it's very, very forward-looking, considering all the water problems the town of Scituate has.
Right.
Good project.
Anybody else? So we're going to continue this, right? We have to,
Yeah.
We're going to be getting some revised documents, and just keep in mind.
we're going
we
to
have a-
continue it, but we're going to try to continue, we're going to continue to the next one, close
Close and issue.
and issue.
So orders will be ready at the next meeting?
No, they won't be ready, but we can close an issue, and then they can
Well,
be ready
Amy,
thereafter.
is it better instead of the next meeting, that we do it all 2 meetings from now, to have a chance to get everything?
That would be probably preferable, to
But-
have
but-
everything in hand for the document list, yeah.
But at that, if we push it out 2 meetings, would we have orders, or we still have to?
Yes. Well,
Well, you have orders, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, but you close and you issue, and you have 21 days to issue, but when we do it like that, you have them within a few days. The staff needs time to get stuff ready. You don't just walk with orders that night, it's not how it works. Just clearing that up, that's all. But you have them quicker than 2 weeks, that's the advantage to voting it like that.
do you think you can have all the information you need at the next meeting?
Or within 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, it's really, if I have everything down, it's really just developing the planting plan for the vicinity of the pond and adding the intermittent stream and erosion controls in the areas we've talked about. So pretty minor revisions, I think.
And feel free to run stuff by Amy and I in draft form, so when you finalize, it's just one final set.
What is the date of the next hearing?
18th.
She really needs it by next Monday.
March.
Yeah, so next Monday, a week from today, is the deadline for the materials. And then the meeting after that is April 1st. So,
Okay.
which will be here before you know it. 4 weeks.
So we're saying is if it's the next meeting, we can submit it, review it, close it,
Close it.
yeah. And then in other words, we vote it, and then you have 21 days to issue, is that how it goes?
But the idea is that we're gonna try to have that prepared sooner,
Okay, right,
okay?
yeah, so let's do that.
All right.
If we can.
So you're gonna,
I make a motion to continue.
March 18th?
Yeah, wait a minute.
663 Hadley.
620, Hadley Country Club.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Give it time, Penny?
620.
6:20, thank you.
Well,
Everybody's at 6:20.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, nice to meet you. Thanks for your review.
Same here. Pleasure.
97 Hayward Foster Road, ANRAD. On March 4th, 2019, at 6:30 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Maureen Colvin for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation in ANRAD on property located at 97 Edward Foster Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Make a motion to continue to March 18th.
A second on that?
Second.
Like 6:20.
6:20. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 43 Oceanside Drive, raise, move, dwelling. On March 4th, 2019, at 6:35 PM, the Town Hall of Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws, Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of Alfred Boyoisian to move an existing dwelling, remove existing concrete foundation, and import approximately 60 cubic yards of clean fill to fill in a depressed area left from the removal of foundation on property located at 43 Oceanside Drive, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Marabito from Lawson Engineering Company, representing the applicant for the proposed work. The applicant owns the property at 43 Oceanside Drive. The perimeter on the plan is outlined in yellow. The area outlined in blue is the existing single-family dwelling, which the purpose of this application is to allow them to move that entire structure off-site and relocate it to another site down the street. The purple line around it is the proposed silt sock that would be in place during the course of the move. The work would consist of picking the house up by a house mover, putting it on a trailer and moving it down the street, and then he would also remove the existing reinforced concrete foundation, and there would be some fill that brought in approximately 60 cubic yards, which he would use to fill in any of the lower areas on the lot, so it's not a hazard. So we have followed the notice of intent to request of the commission to do the work, and it's a fairly straightforward project.
Penny?
Go to somebody else, please.
Doug?
Well, mean, obviously, the impacts of picking that up and moving it are, I guess, you've seen that done, you trailer it down the road or whatever. I don't know if there's any other additional environmental impacts that we have to be concerned about for the transportation of the building itself. My only question is, how do we, give an order of conditions on moving a building?
The only conditions are to work on the site.
The filling of the 60 cubic yards?
Removing the foundation.
Removing the foundation.
Foundation. So if the house is in limbo, no place to go,
Not our concern.
Where's it going?
where's it going? Yeah.
Straight. Pulsing down the street.
There's a house that's down the street that's being lifted and moved, right?
No, it's already.
This is going to be
It's all
lifted
gone.
down
It's
to
gonna go to
43.
No, but, so this house right now is sitting on an existing foundation?
Yes.
Is that house in a resource area?
This house?
The house that's being moved?
This is the
house is
house
on
being
bed.
moved.
This is the house being moved, Frank.
Okay,
Which is in land subject to coastal storm flow.
all right,
It's going to be moved to 33,
I got it.
which is another notice of intent.
Yeah,
Right? So, I mean, they're, I don't know if we could, they're not dovetailed together necessarily. There'd be two separate
Separate,
orders. One to
right.
take this
That's
house.
This is for the work done on this site,
Right.
period.
But if, let's just say, the house gets picked up and moved, it's sitting on a trailer in the, somewhere, and it's got no place to go, are there other environmental concerns that we had? A storm moves in and smashes the house, knocks it over, and...
Our jurisdiction is for this site.
Right, but I think what he's perhaps saying is they lift the house and then it doesn't have a place to go. It's still on the lot. Is that what you're suggesting?
That is my suggestion.
Okay.
Are we exposing any other, do we have to consider any other environmental impacts if between now, the lifting of the house and the final landing place, there was, a storm event comes in and...
But I mean, you could say the same thing about raising the house with an excavator. Where's all the rubble gonna end up? It could be dumped on the yard next door, the trucks could be left there full of rubble. I mean,
Yeah, so we have construction sequences when we have things like that. When we have projects that we have excavation, replicate, and we have, part of our conditions consider a construction event. So that if something is to interrupt that construction event, that there's safety measures in place, that there would be, trenching, you'd trench and fill, so we don't have these big open areas. I mean, I've certainly been part of moving a house before. It's not that as big of a deal as you'd think. There's overhead wires probably you have to watch out for.
Actually, he doesn't have to move any poles. They've looked at it. He's already spoken to the movers. It's a fairly straightforward move.
So-
Maybe going down Oceanside Drive on a flatbed.
I mean, the town has a process for permitting that. We've moved buildings before, and,
Okay.
you go through the building department and the utilities and traffic and the police, and will it disturb school buses, and it's a little bit, you gotta address all those different pieces,
Right.
which are out of our purview.
Well, okay, there we go. So there's
So-
another review, there's another process. that we
But,
don't have to
but to your
consider, like,
point, is there
everything.
anything,
it'll be the
in-
building inspector's
in
big
moving this,
concern.
that would create a environmental hazard or problem? I can't think of anything off the top of my head, other than, as Paul says, let's say we're building a new building there, they have to keep everything contained in the areas that have the erosion control or...
Right.
This is straightforward. What they'll do is to take the anchor bolts out, they'll put cribbing under it, lift it up, and move it out of the trailer with the skids. And move it away. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is more straightforward than than what I ever thought, until I saw it.
Frank's right, there's more to it than just picking it up. You have to get the other permits to move it as well.
All right, that was one of my questions.
So what happens to,
What else are we supposed to look at?
to this site?
Nothing.
Where he wants to put,
What
fill it
happens to
where
it?
where there's a hole,
Yeah.
but otherwise,
Well, what he'll do is remove the foundation, And if there's any depressions there, which we assume there are, he just level that off so you don't have any hazards.
So is there a grading plan or any, well, I should
No,
go and turn.
we're not changing any grades. I mean, if there's some lower areas in there, you know, like a shallow, like the footings, or, you know, he pulls those out, if he has to bring fill in, he doesn't want to leave a hole in the lot, is what I'm saying. We're going to change the existing elevations of the land. It'll be the same after everything's removed.
So beyond emptying the lot, there is no plan for it?
Not this time, no. If he does anything with that, he'll have to come back to you with another application for whatever he's proposing.
And where, I understand you're taking the foundation out, how is it going to be disposed of?
You mean the concrete?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it has to go to an approved landfill, or it'll be crushed. Usually they separate the concrete and the steel with the plant, and it can be recycled.
Paul?
No questions.
Chen?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, given some of the prior history with bringing in fill, do we have an idea of how much needs to be brought in? That could be, because if you just say it's filling in the yellow.
60
No.
yards, you said,
Oh, you-
right?
Well,
You
it's
did
about
call that
60
fill.
yards, and maybe we're estimating that, because he'll be removing the footings and the walls,
Okay,
and then what he'll do is to level the ground off to the same grade it is now.
with only 60.
It's about 60 yards, I mean, it might be less. It's a fairly new house.
Amy?
So I didn't see any utilities on the plan. What's going to happen to the utilities that are there? Can you add them to the plan?
They'll
And
be
then,
disconnected. I mean, part of the move, he has to shut off the electricity, the gas and the power to that in order to get a permit to move it. He
I assume this is probably a water and sewer and sewer and water connection on those, right, Paul?
Well, the sewer would be shut off at the corporation on site. The
can
sewer-
you add those locations to the plan?
Pardon?
Could you add the utility locations to the plan?
No, I don't know where they are on that lot. It's a fairly new house.
Well, probably a little bit of due diligence, and we could figure that out, where the utilities come in.
So the town has them. I mean,
The town, yeah.
the water department and the sewer department should have those. I mean, the aerial service for electricity is kind of irrelevant to us, but the sewer and the water and the gas are all underground, so I assume there's some excavation entailed, so I think they should be on the plan.
I think so. And then, so I read that it was 60 cubic yards of fill that's going to be added. There's going to be an erosion control. So in what means are we going to stabilize the ground once the house is gone?
I guess that's, my hope would be
It's going to be
that
planted?
we really should have some sort of either grading or plan to show what's gonna happen to this lot, Paul.
Well, the elevations aren't going to change?
Well, then show what they're doing. I mean, you're removing the house, you're adding fill because there's a depressed area. Well, I think given, as Jen said, the past experience with this person, we don't want to find out that all of a sudden the house is gone and then there's some new grades and fill and whatever. I think there should be a proposed plan for how this lot's going to be after the house is removed.
Well, in the application, we spell out that if the house would be removed first and the concrete would be removed, he'd bring the fill in to
Yeah.
fill in any depressions that are left from the removal of the concrete.
So when you're all done with that, you can give us another plan, and it's gonna look, with that, the grades that run through that lot, it's gonna look just like that lot.
I mean, if you want to condition an as-built grading plan when he's done, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay? That might be a good way to deal with it.
That's fine.
And we'll
Okay,
add
condition.
the utility locations, you can do that.
Yeah, usually the water's shut off at the corporation on the property at the street line, and then the line would be cut at the house. Then the sewer is usually capped somewhere, and that's it.
Have we, I mean, I feel like sometimes there's been discussion about like seeding this dirt land. Is there a plan for that? Just to try and, I think that might help.
Oh, it should be stabilized, you're right.
Right,
Yeah.
stabilize.
Sure, that's the fancy
You
word for
don't see
seeding.
it.
They're gonna take
Put
seed,
that in
yeah.
conditions. Amy.
The silt sock will remain in place.
But that should be vegetated in some, spreading loam, grass, whatever.
Is it a dirt lot or is it more rocks? I can't remember.
I think that's the lawn around there, isn't it?
It's a lawn right now, Lord knows what it will be when.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of dirt after the foundation's
Yeah,
removed.
there'd be who knows?
So, having said that, though, so if we're gonna ask him to put in loom and seed it as part of the
That might be more than
conditions of this,
6
well, no,
No.
that he's gonna have to raise the grade. He's gonna have to change the grade by 4 inches of loom or something like that.
Why does he have to
No.
loom it? It's already seeded.
No, that's what I thought you were asking.
Oh, I don't want to
The
loom
new
it.
stuff.
No.
I would assume if there's a depression there, they could fill that with some gravel, and then the last 4 inches could be
Yeah.
loam.
Yeah,
On
exactly.
just the depression.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to raise the grade. I mean, if he's bringing in a foot of gravel, he's bringing 8 inches and put 4 inches of loom on top of that and seed it. That goes up there.
Well, and then one of the other comments I had was, in addition to depicting the utility locations on the plan and stabilizing the property, is, there's a notation that the house is gonna be moved to 33 Oceanside.
43.
It says on the plan, this house will move to 33 Oceanside, but in the NOI, it says the house is to be moved. So I was thinking the plan should be revised so that it's not committed to moving to 33 Oceanside, since that's not permitted at this point.
Why is it an issue if he wants to move it to another lot?
Well, do we have, we don't have, he doesn't have a permission to move the house. That other house hasn't been conditioned yet, the other lot.
That's right.
So I don't think that,
Well, just from a practical point of view, Frank, if he receives an order of conditions to do work on the other lot, then this house wouldn't be moved until that foundation was in. The notice of intent for this would be good for 3 years, as well as the other one, so he'd have 3 years to do the work.
But I think
so,
what Amy's,
so in the orders for this one, we just put that this house doesn't move until the other one's been conditioned.
Right.
Right, well, but, okay, but the notice doesn't commit this house to a particular location.
Right.
But the plan
No,
does.
it doesn't.
So I'm asking that the plan strike the
33.
location.
right, that's the simplest thing, just deal with your plan and the house
Yeah.
being moved off the lot and taking care of your lot.
And that way the house can go
Right.
anywhere. Go to Cohasset, I don't care.
It's not good for the resource.
Only hope. You get that, Paul?
See, down there, it's very
What
plain.
it says is that it is planned to relocate the house to 33 Oceanside Drive.
Well, it says it's planned.
That's the plan, that's Plan A. Plan A doesn't work out, then you have to do something else with it. You either keep it there, move it somewhere else in town, or tear it down, or whatever. The reason I put that on there, so you know where it's, what the disposition
No,
is.
we understand, but it's just that the two are different, that's all. They should match, Paul, not matches.
Anything else? Anybody in the audience? Yes, sir.
Okay, my name's Mark Homacher, I live at 95 Marion Road. Looking at Mr. Aber's suggestions earlier, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think there's no rush to address the property until the house is actually moved and things are taken care of. The other question I have is that the owner previous to Mr. Boyhagen, he dug like 25 feet down a big hole, and it's all filled with concrete up into it, now it's existing slab. So they taking all that concrete out, that huge hole, and just gonna put 60 yards in, some clean fill, it's not gonna fill it up. So that's what I'm curious about. And where's the clean fill gonna come from? Supposedly clean fill from other properties he owns, or clean fill from like planters or a certified person who can provide clean fill. Other than that, the grade and stuff is not really a big issue. Just that all the fill that goes in, I know you only have a certain amount of fill you can put in on a certain property. I don't like to make sure this fill is toward that total. So that additional fill down the road doesn't show up like what happened across the street to make the house meet the height requirement.
Well, what we just asked is that they're telling us that this is going to, they will have the existing grade, the grades will be the same when this is done, and we're going to get a plan to that effect.
But there's a lot more concrete in the ground than more than...
They're going to remove the foundation. Below the foundation, I think it's irrelevant what's there. I mean,
it's just a slab there now.
So they're going to remove...
That slab is 20 feet deep.
The slab is 20 feet deep?
Yeah, the previous owner dug out, all the way down, and filled the entire area up with concrete.
Wow.
Till it came up to an even slab all around the house there.
Well, they're going to have fun ripping that out.
I'm just saying, if their plan is to take all that out, then he's going to need more than 60 cubic yards of fill.
What the?
Well,
Wow.
unless he's going to level it to the existing slab and just leave the slab the way it is, then he won't need any fill.
I really, they're going to remove the foundation.
But there is no foundation. It's a retaining wall with a slab base.
Okay.
It's a storage area. It's 3.5 feet tall, waterproof. Once the retaining wall comes down, all you have there is a slab of concrete, unless they're going to excavate all that. So you really won't need
Then you don't need fill is what you're
the
saying.
fill to come in unless he's digging all that concrete out. And if that's his plan, he's going to need more than 60 yards for you to approve.
So could we,
This is a mess.
Bottom line is, you should just make this decision after the house is gone and address this issue
Well,
then.
you need to condition the whole project at once. We don't do it in pieces.
And the
So,
reality is, we want it restored to grade. So it took 67 yards to restore it to grade. That's what,
he's suggesting if they, I mean, if that's true, there's a serious structural problem for a new house to go in there. Sooner or later, they're gonna have to deal with removing that old concrete if it's just junk fill, or just pieces of concrete and stuff like that.
No, right now, it's a very smooth slab.
No, but I mean underneath.
Underneath it.
Underneath his house, he's got a retaining wall around it. He has a side door, and underneath that is a storage area, and he waterproofed it. Once the house goes down, you're gonna have a pristine slab there.
Right.
Unless you decide to start digging into the concrete. To remove all the concrete, it goes down very deep. So now you've got a huge foundation hole that needs more than 60 yards to fill in.
Right.
but
So if you leave the concrete the way it is on a slab,
You don't need any.
he may need maybe 10 or 15 yards, okay, to replace where the retaining wall section was.
Okay.
Because in order to move the house, I guess you're gonna take the roof line off, the porch off, and all, you can't move all that at one, in my estimation, I got no idea, I'm not a pro, but I think prior to moving the house, besides taking care of the septic and the water and all the lines, he's gotta take the porch off, which you could consider as a roof line probably, because there's no support, the porch goes, and move the house after that's all disassembled to wherever it's gonna go. But like you said, if the house is supposed to go into one spot, and the plan changes, and you got a house stuck someplace on a barge, or someplace, all right, going nowhere, and then, the property can't be worked.
So, I mean, if our condition
I don't- I
specifically
think
says
the-
return to original grade.
Yeah.
regardless of the 60 cubic yards.
Right.
More
Yeah.
or less.
Right.
It is estimated that
Original
it's
grade.
60.
But we typically ask what the material is, but we don't want, I mean, I don't want to hear that they added 60 yards to this because it's on the permit, and 60 yards makes a mound.
No. No, what I said,
You said an as-built.
I ain't changing the grade of the lot, period.
Okay.
And that's why I suggest we do the as-built
Okay.
plan.
And I understand the issue about the house, but the fire department, the building department, everybody's going to want to know where this house is going to go. So that's not up to the Conservation Commission, in my mind.
We're concerned with the work touching the ground.
Right.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
No, we all would have our concerns for this, that's for sure.
On this fill that does show up, it does count towards the total you put on the property, correct? Or is it separate? Don't you only have X amount of fill you put on?
At the end of the day, we don't want this lot to be elevated at all.
Not an inch.
The grade on this lot should remain the same as it is now.
Okay, well, it's up like 2 feet from what it used to be, so it's okay.
But today, we have to go from today, okay?
Right, but I'm just saying, if they don't touch that concrete slab, he hardly has to add any dirt at all.
I believe that all that's coming out. They want to remove their foundation and slab, so.
Well, that's a lot of concrete.
Well,
And like I said,
it's their nickel.
if that's what's gonna happen, he's gonna need approval of more than 60 yards today. That's all.
Whatever it takes for compensatory fill to return it to the same grade is what
Can
we
we
want.
agree that it's gonna be clean fill from someplace that he doesn't own?
Clean fill.
Clean fill, like, and who decides what clean fill's gonna be? Can he take the property that he owns and bring that fill in and dump it?
If it's clean fill, we don't want any contaminated material. And if there's something on the site that is contaminated, then we'll have to address that. Okay.
Frank, are you saying you want note 7 removed, where it says it's plan to relocate the existing dwelling to 33 Oceanside?
I think that was
We're talking
the,
about?
yes, yes.
All right.
And the utilities shown on the plan, Paul.
Right.
Testing to that regard, as far as the fill?
We never have, but we have had situations where someone has removed contaminated material and put it on another site, and then
Oh,
they
yeah.
made 2 sites contaminated.
Yeah.
What were they contaminated with?
It's out on Piggy Beach Road, and this lot was filled years ago with a bunch of building material that was
Oh, from the
demolished.
harbor.
Oh,
Yeah, from Front Street. It
From
came
Front Street, it was like a
Front
fire
Street.
or a building, and they had bricks and all kinds of crap in it.
Crap, and then,
And then they were told to remove it, and then the guy down the street says, I need fill, so he takes the fill that was contaminated, and they moved the damn thing down. So then we wound up with 2 sites that were contaminated. So, to Mr. Hamaker's point, I mean, we want to make sure that it's decent material. So we're putting clean fill on that note.
oh Lord.
I feel like this is one of those things where they got the shells and
Yeah.
it's just everybody's
Moving
been moving
around.
around, they were supposed to guess where the house is or something.
We might see.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else?
So what are we doing?
I think we're continuing it.
Okay.
Paul's gonna get those pieces on the plan.
Okay, I make a motion, we continue to March 18, 43, Oceanside,
Second.
6:20.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Paul, while we're here, how are we doing with the other lot? I mean, we still don't have erosion control.
Amy sent me an email and asked me what he's gonna do with it, and I think Fred responded to her in an email.
But it's not his choice.
Pardon?
It's not his, he doesn't get to decide that. We gave a set of orders, an enforcement order, and said, put erosion control up around that site.
And at the last meeting, we indicated that we wanted it.
I'm aware of that, and I did point that out to him.
Okay.
And may I make just a quick mention? I went back over the original NOI for that, and it says in there that before any work starts, erosion control will be put on that site. Well,
Not
he
there.
started work before he even got here, and he still hasn't put erosion control. He took the house down, so he started work in your notice of intent before any work started. So he's like just snowballing here with a violation. Before he took the house down, he should have put erosion control. He shouldn't have done anything until he came here. But he went and did that, and now we asked them to have it in by that Friday before we had a storm, and he sends back a
So-
flippin' to,
You're the messenger, we're not gonna shoot you, but we want you to take that back.
Well,
You don't want to shoot the messenger?
Right.
no,
I mean, this discussion's a
I-
little out of order in that we should bring this up under agent's report and
Okay.
enforcement.
All right.
Because we might want to talk about renewing the enforcement order.
Oh, well, we'll discuss
to
that,
address
but
that erosion.
we had Mr. Maravito in front of us, so.
Right, and it could be tied, because you could not close this hearing until you get your erosion control you want, too.
Well, no, I think you really need to address this one independently of the other one.
yeah.
But it's a good time, since you have the engineer here, to bring
Right.
it up, and it's the same applicant, but
Okay,
lucky for us, I think he stays for the
Are you-
next one too, so.
Are you talking, are you referring to 43?
Yeah, that we need to keep 43 and 33 separate.
Yeah, they're two different.
Yeah.
okay. So we have do we continue this?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, it's all done.
I can imagine.
So, all right, number 6, Pondview, on March 4th, 2019, 6:40 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a hearing, wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700 Town Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Bradford Dunn and Michaela Seawall to raise and reconstruct a property located at 6 Pondview Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Thank you. My name is Paul Maravito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Sewell. They're the owners of the property at 6 Pondview Avenue. They have a 21,991 square foot lot, which is outlined in yellow on the plan. This property is on land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is the FEMA flood line in the map. On this side it's elevation 16, this side is elevation 15. The elevation of the land varies from elevation 12 at the street to 14 on the northerly side of the lot. The existing house is shown in yellow with the covered porch and an open deck, and there's a separate detached garage. The proposal is to raise the existing dwelling and the garage and replace it with a new dwelling with an attached garage and some porches as well, which the structures, the proposed structures outlined in blue on this plan. We're not proposing to change the grades on the property. The lower level will be a crawl space, which will be just above the existing grade. And by doing that, the flood insurance rates would be lower because you would not have a lower level in the house. The crawl space elevation for the new dwelling would be at elevation 13. The first floor would be at 17.1, which is 1.1 feet above the FEMA flood elevation of 16. That's being raised at 1.1 feet to meet your rules and regulations, that would be 1 foot above the base flood. There's no stormwater application required for this. Note number 7 has the existing and proposed impervious areas. There's an increase of 18.2% in the impervious area, and which does not trip the 25% threshold for stormwater work. We did submit the foundation plan that was prepared by the architect. That shows 16 flood vents in the house which are required under the FEMA regulations for flood control within the house, within the crawl space. Any of the disturbed areas to be returned back to the lawn area, which is there now at the present time. With that, I can answer any questions you may have.
It's that foundation.
Pardon?
It is a foundation.
Yes. It's a reinforced concrete foundation wall with a breakout panels.
Yeah.
It'll be a crawl space.
No, I don't have
Doug?
big house.
I do, but they're complicated.
So I asked the question.
Well, I'm trying to figure out exactly where we are away from any kind of a velocity zone, or
Yeah.
we're the Squashka
Road.
Pond here, and then where's the ocean?
Here. Oh, the ocean is way over here.
It's way over?
Yes, it's quite a distance. This is the lights at Hadley Road, Gannett going down. Pondview is the first right. So the closest resource area is in Squashka. You're a good distance.
Okay. How come, I mean, how come in this particular case, the AE zone with the BFE is not the contour line?
What's that?
The flood zone is not of elevation, it's got a base flood elevation of 13. In this case, it's not the contour line, and I know sometimes they aren't, but how come it isn't on this one?
This is where it's shown on the plan.
But that's where it shows on the FEMA
Where
maps.
the pink line is where it's shown on the plan, and we point that out. When you do an elevation certificate, you go by the actual elevations.
Yeah.
So that's why
There's a conflict, is what you're saying, then. and-
well, it is, but, for example, if they were applying for a mortgage, the mortgage company is gonna look at that pink line and determine whether or not you're in a flood zone. In some cases, the elevation of the house is way above elevation 16, but because that pink line is shown on the plan where it is, they still have to get flood insurance, even though you're way above the flood zone. But in this case here, what we're doing is, when that house is completed, we'll do an elevation certificate, which is based upon final construction. It'll show that the slab of the crawl space is above the FEMA flood zone. As long as that slab is at or above the ground around it, then the insurance rates are going to be low. Because by doing that, that crawl space slab is not considered to be a lower level or a basement area when they consider the flood insurance premiums.
And you're not, I don't see any proposed grading, so there's not going to be any proposed grading
We
necessary.
don't need to change the grades. If you look at the elevation of the land, this is the garage in this area here. There's a driveway here now. They're going to keep the driveway, drive into the garage. The existing garage is here, and the proposed one is here as well. What they're going to do is have a crawl space at elevation 13, which will be 1 foot above the grade here. It'll be at elevation 13, well, this is the garage, but the crawl space slab here will be at 13. The whole purpose of that slab is to keep it at or above the elevation of the ground around it.
Okay.
And it'll keep it level. So this is a pretty flat lot, that's why I
Yeah.
mentioned it. It only varies 2 feet from the front to the back, which is pretty flat. That's over a distance of 200 feet.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Oh, good. Jen?
No? This is one of my favorite roads in Minot, so I'm excited to see this project.
Amy?
Roads.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything particular about this one either. I wasn't sure if the foundation plan was compliant, but it sounds like it is, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it.
Anybody in the audience? Make a motion to close it.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
RDA's. 54 man lot septic repair. On March 4th, 2019, during the 6:15 meeting of the Town Hall, Central Conservation Commission will hold a request of Richard McLary, determination of applicability of Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws to upgrade the septic system on property located at 74 Man Lot Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Evening. Again, for the record, my name is James Garfield, an engineer at Morse Engineering, representing Richard McLary for the RDA associated with the septic system repair at 54 Man Lot. So to familiarize yourself with the plan, we've got our property lines outlined here in bold. Man Lot Road is located at the bottom of the page, and our resource area, vegetated wetlands, shown here in blue. We've also got our 50 and 100-foot buffers shown in red and green. Our existing 3-bedroom single-family building is located here centered on the lot, and our driveway runs up to a detached garage here to the left of it. So the building's currently serviced by a failing cesspool shown here on the edge of the existing driveway. This was actually an emergency design due to the fact that the cesspool is backing up. The homeowner has been pumping it regularly, weekly. So what we proposed is a septic tank to be installed in the area of that existing cesspool. And by putting it there within the 50-foot buffer, we've achieved a gravity-fed system that will feed out to a D-box and then leaching chamber bed in the front yard, which will partially be within the 100-foot wetland buffer. But yeah, again, the only reason that we've gone into the 50 at all is just to achieve that gravity system, and it is in the existing driveway area where the existing cesspool sits. So, leave it to you guys for any questions.
Penny?
Obviously, it'll be a huge improvement.
No questions.
No questions. No questions.
No, and I went over this one with Greg beforehand because technically this would have been a notice, but since it's an emergency and everything is on the landward side of the house and in the driveway in our disturbed area, I felt that a request would serve the best purpose.
Great.
In this situation.
Anybody's out there for this?
So a negative.
Great.
I make a motion for a negative 3.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Gulf River Association, 143 Border Street, Osprey Nest. On March 4th, 2019, during the 6:15 meeting in Town Hall, Central Conservation will act on the request of David Dwyer for a determination of applicability, Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws, to replace an osprey nest on marsh near property located at 143 Border Street, Scituate. Butters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? If I know that's what you want to do here, we would have got you out of here a lot earlier. You're doing
I haven't had a meeting in like 2 years, so I'm enjoying it, actually. It's been a long time since I've sat in a meeting in here.
So I guess you know Keith. My name is David Dwyer. I'm 332 South Main Street in Cohasset. I'm the president of something called the Gulf River Association. We have 11 board members and about 75 members, and basically we're abutters of the Gulf River in both Cohasset and Scituate. And so predating me, 2 osprey nests, and I believe that you have a photo or you have some familiarity with what an osprey nest is, but 2 osprey nests existed on the marshes on both the east and west side of the Gulf River in Scituate, and we're here today to propose to rebuild one of those marshes in the area, again, on the east side, owned by the Eleanor Blakey. And so technically, we're asking for permission to replace a nest, But and those nests were lost, by the way, in ice 2 years ago. The ice shifted on the marshes and knocked both of them away, and they were swept away. But, so we're asking permission to replace a nest, but we're also asking permission to help out a breeding pair of ospreys who have built a nest on actually on the floor of the marsh itself, and successfully bred 2 birds last year. So the old nests were successful in bringing a breeding pair of ospreys to the river area.
Can I
So-
ask a question about the platform?
Absolutely.
I've just never seen this on a platform.
This is one, Keith Wallow, 200 Country Way. This is one we actually built 2 years ago in the North River. It's in Norwell. And just a little background on it, the shorter post is a 16-foot 6x6. We drive it in 9 or 10 feet is what we're probably going to get out here in Cohasset because of the stone. But then we stand up the second one and bolt the 2 together, and that's where we get the strength. That's a perch, which this gentleman, no, I hadn't either, and he really insisted on having a perch on it. And if you look at it, it's got little holes in it.
Yeah.
When he first brought it to me and said, "This is the perch I want to use," I was like, "You got a big wind sail here, and as soon as you get a good wind out there, it's just going to blow it over." So he cut those holes in it and put them in, and that's how we installed it.
That's the first time I've seen it.
And the guy had never done an osprey nest, is, like I said, he lives right in the Norwell Scituate line, and I told him, I said, don't be disappointed if it's a couple of years before you get one. 2 weeks. And they came back this past year, so they've been there 2 seasons now.
What does the copper do, Keith?
It keeps any animals from being able to crawl up the post to get to the babies.
Oh, yeah, slippery.
Yeah, so it's like 3.5 feet of copper well, we use copper because.
Same idea as banding trees for,
Yeah, for the caterpillars, yeah. Gypsy moths.
What was posted?
We use a small post hole digger,
Oh, all right, so.
and then we use a tripod. We don't bring anything out of the marsh except for a metal hammerhead to drive the piling, because since we're only doing one, we won't bring out a pneumatic hammerhead or anything. Drive that one in, and then we carry the second one and stand it up and bolt through the 2 together.
Pretty neat, very good.
Anybody else?
This
in
is
the
a
audience?
fun one.
it's different from the one we conditioned in Humrock last year, but it's good.
Yeah.
How is it different?
Construction.
It's different
okay.
construction, that's all.
Then it has the perch.
Take a motion.
I make a motion for -3.
Second?
All in favor? Do we have your contact information for the
Sure.
Golf Association?
Yeah.
Do we have that?
I'll make sure.
Okay, that'd be good to have.
Right.
I know in the past, when we've had different projects, we've communicated before the dock or some other piece, I know.
Yeah,
Input.
I would very much like to follow up with you on that. I'll do that.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
All right, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a great night. Thanks a lot.
Egypt Beach parking lot, what are we doing with it? We're gonna just open and...
Thanks a lot.
Well, DPW was gonna, I thought they were gonna be here to present on it. Remember Jeff said he was coming to the meeting when he handed it in? I mean, we could probably just take a look at it and vote on it. So they're proposing to repave Egypt Beach parking lot. And doing so, they're also going to try to make some stormwater improvements by doing some shallow swales along the sides. And if you take a look at the plan, they've got a little bit of stormwater improvement quality portion of the project that they're trying to do.
Do we have that, water, any kind of filtering or anything, is that in part of the plan?
Yeah, it's on the grading and utility plan. Have you not seen it?
No. 'Cause I think they still owe us one. In mine.
Mine it?
Yeah.
Rating.
Yeah, so they're adding improvements here. they got a couple of things going on, like washing station, some swales to improve water quality. But otherwise, it's just repaving the existing broken.
They're not enlarging it at all.
No.
No.
Are they changing the number of parking spots?
They might be. I'm not even sure there's parking spots.
At one point in time.
I don't think it's lined now,
You
is
can't
it?
see anything now.
Yeah, I don't think they've striped them in a while.
Long time.
Not much to strike this.
Yeah. Crumbly.
It's part of the beach committee and rec department.
Yeah.
The beach improvement projects that DPW funded this fiscal year.
It's in rough shape, their parking lot.
If you want more detail, we could continue it and have them come in, or we could,
You've had conversation with them, right? You're good?
yeah, I feel like it's a positive project.
Yeah, and it's kind of a repair and replace
It is.
and improve, yeah.
But we are getting
Just a really repair.
some,
You're getting some
Improvements, yeah,
improvement,
yes.
Is there,
And it's not new impervious.
Right.
is there a timeline on when they're thinking of doing it?
what's that, Jen?
I
Is there a
believe-
time that they're trying to,
I believe
This
it's,
spring.
yeah.
they wanted to go out to bid and get it done before.
That's what I heard too. Yeah. Wanted to get it out.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions, Doug?
My head's full of all kinds of things from the weekend.
From you.
Well, from going to the
Seminar.
conference, so there's been a lot of discussion and of, pervious pavement. And so there was a lot of, and I don't know, my guess is it's incredibly expensive, but in areas like this, putting impervious pavement is, a great plan.
You know what I realized? I didn't read this.
Right.
Can you read this?
We've been chatting
real
away.
quick? While you're-
Pretend we haven't done it already.
On March
Yeah.
2019, at 6:15 in the Town Hall, Situate Conservation Commission will act on the request of the Town of Situate for determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Situate Wetlands bylaws to remove existing pavement and install new binder and wearing coarse pavement, construct new stone line swale to treat runoff near property located at 310 Hadley Road. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Sorry. So are you suggesting that they should be thinking about some other type of,
Just throwing out when, I'm not sure when, we should be considering things like that, when you start pushing towards, more technology into these kind of projects. But
so certainly for new projects, ones that aren't there, or when we've had some situations like a house that gets raised and rebuilt or something like that. I think in the past, we've pretty much accepted if there was pavement or something there, if they'd make improvements in general, so that this water doesn't just sheet off into a wetland or nearby, that would be sufficient. And in this case, that's one of the pieces that they've done along the edge of the
Yeah.
They
parking lot.
improved it.
But you're right, I mean, the other piece is to avoid more of that altogether and have pervious pavement or some other means to.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not, I'm sure it's expensive. And, we don't,
It's also a maintenance item, right? I mean, if they don't they have to periodically almost like vacuum that?
They
well,
do.
Yeah.
What do they say?
yeah, I mean, the difficult thing is we can talk about it, offline. It's like, but the difficult things about those is, there's vendors there and engineers that are proposing these things, and they talk about, the maintenance not being, depending on the product, not being a problem. all kinds of benefits, like, it doesn't ice up and slip, so it's safer, but at some point in time, of course, it will fill up, but, and then you're gonna have to maintain it. But, I don't know where we as a commission are supposed to start. I think it begs a broader discussion, like a sort of an overall schematic or a mitigation plan town-wide of how we would approach different measures of dealing with all kinds of projects, but there would be sort of a master plan that we would be following of we're trying to get some limit, like, let's say, like in year 2030, we want to have X amount of additional pervious material in the town in sensitive areas like this and things like that. We don't have that, so I'm not suggesting we can throw that at somebody now. I'm just kind of throwing out there because that's what, this is the conversations that we're having towards mitigating with climate change and everything else, with more water that we're going to have to deal with in all these different locations, always requiring houses to be on piers, proposing more pervious areas, what doesn't have to be pervious pavers, but perhaps gravel and things like that, things that eliminate the pavement. And it's just something that we're, tasked with starting to think about. And I'm not suggesting we'd say, oh no, that they have to do this on this project, because I don't know the costs. I don't know a solid maintenance plan, like how much we could shoot ourselves in the foot if you just start making everybody do that. And at some levels, it looks like small homeowners are footing the bill for what is a much larger problem, because we don't have the political fortitude to do anything about major issue. So, I don't know. So I'm off on a tangent a bit. But
kind of like Frank said a little bit, what we've done to this point, the state, we got a letter from the state that said their legal opinion is an interpretation that if you have a concrete driveway, or a concrete seawall or a paved driveway, you're allowed to maintain and repair it in-kind. But whenever we do new projects, often now, we don't specify it has to be asphalt, but we'll have somebody with a driveway and, 100-foot buffer, and we'll say it has to be pervious, like pervious pavers, it could be pervious asphalt. But, so thus far, it's been on sensitive areas and new projects that we've done it.
We tried to hold the line there,
But to Doug's point, when a project's being redone like this, it is the opportunity to look at it and say, how much better can we do? I mean, we're in this case, we've been pushing DPW with a couple of these projects. Existing conditions were that they just run off into the marsh or woods or wetland, whatever, without anything. And we certainly wouldn't give permission for someone to build that new. So we want to see them do some upgrades. And that's just even a better upgrade would be to make an area more pervious.
Yeah.
It would be, but it's almost being grandfathered in.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But look, Doug said you could the town could develop a master plan and say we're gonna, start replacing certain amounts, because there is no plan right now.
No.
Right, and I think that's what the state is looking for communities to start doing, is start thinking forward instead of just looking at historical data and saying, here's how we do it, here's how we've always done it. These are where the flood lines are now, and that's what we go with. We have to start thinking forward, where things are going to be 20, 30 years from now. So it's a larger task.
How much money does the state have available for that?
They do have money available. That's part of it.
Because that's a big part of it.
There's a lot of money available for it, because Charlie Baker signed an executive order authorizing all kinds of bond money. So there are monies available for towns to put together the plan, not to do the building, but to put together plans. And
study which areas would be
Study,
most applicable or something?
yeah, and find out what makes the most logical sense of what areas you want to look at the hardest, and where you want to spend the money, and how you want to get there, but.
Well, I think it's a conversation we could have with DPW as we move forward.
But on this particular project,
Yeah, right, where are we with this? Closing?
I'd like to give it a negative, right.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
It's always ongoing, Doug.
148 Maple Street,
I wish it was easy.
tree cutting.
Okay, so actually, on this one,
Can I read this?
read it, yeah.
On March 4th, 2019, at 6:15 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Heather Cummings for a determination of applicability to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and Central Wetlands Bylaw to remove several trees on property located at 148 Maple Street, Scituate. Others and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Okay, so the applicants telephoned and said they were not able to come out tonight, but here's some photos of the property. So it's actually one that I drove by and observed that there was a lot of tree cutting going on. It's on Maple, right as you take a left from Old Oaken Bucket to go down towards First Parish, right? Before you go over the river.
Okay, yeah,
And it's a house on the left,
okay.
before you get to the old Litchfield property.
It's on the left?
Yeah,
Oh,
so four-way stop, take a left,
the
go
little
down.
tiny house?
Yes.
Yeah, they're clearing the whole lot, I know
Okay, so that's the house. So, and I had been, and then I noticed that there was a tree truck in the yard, and so
Yeah, I figured he was.
I thought things were getting a little out of hand, so I stopped, and he was like, oh my God, he's like, we got a letter from our insurance company, and it turns out that there's a half a dozen trees, like older, dead trees that are falling and coming down, and so the insurance company basically said, get rid of them, or we're gonna cancel your insurance. So, I mean, you know, number one, so they were working without a permit. I think that they were just reacting to the fact that they got a letter from their insurance company, and she is a tenant in her grandfather's house, so she's not the owner, and they're just trying to be proactive. But, I mean, there are some pretty, if you haven't been there's some pretty large hardwood trees on the property. And there's also a couple of really tall white pines too. But I think that First Heron Brook, that it's been in a flooded state for a pretty consistent basis, at least since I've been working here. It seems like it's almost always bank full. And what they say is that the water actually may be changing course of direction, or just even kind of flowing over into portions of their backyard. And I'm not sure if this is contributing to the trees, suddenly coming down, but I don't know. So I told them to file and bring it to your attention, and at least get permission to continue to take down the dead wood, and then perhaps we should come up with some kind of a buffer replacement or enhancement type of a plan. I think you should probably, if you haven't been out there, you should go out there, but obviously this is not the right time to go out there because there's too much snow cover to really get a sense of how mushy it is on the bank side of the house. You know what I mean? But this house was built, I'm not sure exactly what year, but it was built at least 50 years ago. You know, it's not a new
been there
house.
longer.
Probably in the 40s or something like that, yeah.
40s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
What's the distance or the resource area, roughly, do you think, where they're working?
Well, some of the trees are like literally from me to you on next to their house. And then, so they're, I mean, for the most part, they're at least 25, 30 feet off the banks of the river. And it's
Okay.
not that it's not maintained lawn, per se.
Oh, no,
just
it's
kind
never
of a,
been, yeah.
a
It's
yard
not-
with
Just,
trees
it's
that
always
are
been
down.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wild, and the trees are like out of control, and they're old.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're old, and now they're falling down, and like they crushed one of their cars.
Yeah.
Jen, didn't he say that?
Well, the one they were so worried about coming down and hitting the house came down in this storm.
Just last night.
Oh.
So, and I mean, they limbed up, some of them, but I was like, hey, don't do anything until you get your permit, so, I asked him to stop for now. You know what I mean, until we came up with a plan of action, or at least get him on the books. I mean, I don't know, you guys can do what you want. I mean, you could give him an enforcement order if you wanted to, but I felt that as soon as I stopped and had a conversation with them, they were in the office in like within a half hour.
So who's gonna mark
What do we do,
who's
you
gonna
know?
mark the trees that come down, Amy?
He has them marked.
And you're okay with it?
Yeah, I think that there's like maybe 3 more trees that need to come down.
Okay.
Yeah, thank God.
And they're literally right next to the house, the ones that need to come down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should get those out of there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a problem. I was reading,
Yeah, that's just.
so many of these trees are all reaching their maturity. And
Yeah, well, remember what happened to me?
Penny's gonna flatten
Well, he
all over.
showed me that
Tree came down.
of the tree, like some of the trees that he did take down already, I mean, they were literally hollowed out. They were rough.
Yeah, in the pictures, you can see a little bit of that, yeah.
That's what happened with the tree that came down when after it came down, there was nothing inside the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
Yep. No, it's pretty frightening. So anyways, do what you may, but I say you issue them a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it.
Okay. So let's have a motion.
It's an RDA, so
Yeah,
negative.
so it's a -3. I make a motion for a -3.
Second. All in favor? Great.
No, you have to be safe. I mean, that's a
This is
thing.
55 Collier. On March 4th, 2019, the 6:15 meeting of the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission
Yeah.
will act on the request of Leonard and Virginia Cubel. How do I pronounce that?
Cubelis.
Cubelis, thank you. For a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate bylaw to install sonotube footings for support of second-floor addition on property located at 55 Collier Road, Scituate. Butters and interested parties are invited to attend. Evening.
Again, James Garfield from Morse Engineering, representing Leonard and Virginia Cubelis. So to familiarize yourself with the plan, we've got our property lines outlined here in bold, an existing 2-story dwelling shown right here. First off, we show a FEMA zone AE16. It's a dashed black line here along the 16 contour. We fall under the Zone X side of that line. And in terms of the resources that we actually do fall under, you'll notice the blue line, dashed line here at the top of the coastal bank. And our proposed work falls within the 50-foot buffer of that. The only proposed work that we're suggesting for this project here tonight is the installation of 1 precast sonotube to uphold the back end of an addition coming off of an existing garage. So that's pretty much the extent of it.
I don't have a problem with it. Looks good to me.
No problem. Well, good. Amy, that's enough.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion for a -3.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
James, that'll be ready tomorrow. The permit.
So what do we have? What's the note I saw here? That's what about, is 182 Central Ave to April 22nd?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Nothing.
Keep it in the folder so I don't lose it. but- Here, I'll take it.
You want to do the agent's report, correspondence, violations? What do you want to do?
Sure, so, I mean, want to continue conversations about enforcement on Oceanside and what we want to do about that? I mean, I think I forwarded.
Quick first.
Do what?
Could we discuss something quicker first?
Okay, how about if we do the trails update?
Well, why are we avoiding this?
Well, I'm not avoiding it, I just know it's going to take some time. I have one.
I think we have, you're curious about this. Yeah, so,
I have just a quick question that
all right, fine.
we were sent a letter for 214 Clap Road, and I
Oh,
thought it was
right.
very interesting
Mhm.
that they have not met. So what do we do? Do we do anything, or?
Well, I did receive a response from somebody on the project team
Yeah,
that they are working towards getting responses to conditions that they haven't met.
yeah, well, they're like conditions that should have been done right at the get-go, and it kind of surprised me.
Well, I think that some of them actually have been done and they just haven't produced the documentation.
Well, yeah, you're right, they probably were, okay. That's all, Frank, it was an easy one.
Okay. So, Mr. Voyage, with the,
Well, we have a few things on that one to talk about. I mean, we have it on the agenda for orders. So
Right.
33 Oceanside Drive, you know, we voted to close. And so I think we've gone back and forth between whether you want to issue orders with special conditions to meet the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act and protect the interests, or deny the project because you don't feel like, or not that you don't feel like, just because it does not meet the requirements of the act. So I put out a couple different versions of orders or denials for you guys to review and talk about how you feel you want to go on that one. But separately, and so I guess we do kind of need to talk about it separately because there's that. But then there's also the enforcement order, which it's come to my attention that there were questions and confusion about the enforcement order and the penalty associated with the enforcement order, which came from Mr. Boyajian to the town administrator. And I think that we did clear up the fact that the violation was for both raising the house and filling the property, but the penalty was just imposed on one of those activities, which was filling the property without a permit. Because he did, in fact, get a permit from the building department, and there was some interdepartmental confusion about that issuance. So that's why we decided, after advice from council, to drop that penalty from $4,200 down to the $2,100. But just, we can confirm, or you can confirm that that's what your intent was, is to keep it at the $2,100, and that you do expect that be paid before activities happen, if you go to issue an order. Or consequently, or on the other hand, I mean, I don't know, I think the enforcement order goes away if you vote to issue an order of conditions, the enforcement order kind of goes away. But now then, secondarily, we have the request for erosion control from February 11th, which you said that you expected to be in within 7 days, and clearly he did not do that. So we contacted him and said, hey, where's the erosion control? And he said, hey, I'm not going to put it in until you give me orders. And so,
yeah, so,
I mean, I think that the message that I'm getting from most of you is that you're sick and tired of that type of response
Right.
when clear direction was given.
And it's on tape, he begrudgingly agreed to do it.
So the flip to this is, as we move forward, is how do we control this project? And since I got on this commission, it's been a debate whether you are best to deny, if there's some projects that just need to be denied, they need to be denied. I mean, they're just not a good project, and so you deny them. Or if it's a project that you think that could get approved, do you condition it, but put in all the pieces in the conditions that you feel would help you have the most control over the project? Because when you deny it and the applicant appeals it, then they pretty much go to the state, and then the state sets the conditions.
We have no say.
Well, but that's not true.
But you're denying it, if you deny it, well, whether you deny it or whether you issue an order, if they appeal it, there's a state appeal, but there's also, if they're going to appeal the local bylaw decision,
Right.
you're denying under both, local and state, so they typically would go to the state first.
Yeah.
But in order to get anywhere, you really have to appeal both, which ends you up in Superior Court. So, but I think you can get a good flavor of the way it's headed. I mean, say you were to deny something with no basis. But on this one, I mean, you have clear interests that you're trying to protect, which is storm damage prevention and flood control. And I think we have a preponderance of evidence that was shown through photographs and video footage that floodwater overtops the seawall and comes over in sufficient volume and momentum so that if they fill the property up from 11 to 16 and then build a solid foundation on top of that, that water could get redirected and have negative impact for flood control and storm damage prevention. I mean, so that's one way to look at it, right? And so, you know, I think we definitely talked about amongst the hearing and the abutters and the applicant about the desire to see a project there go up on piers so that you could allow for the free flow of water and would minimize any possibility of channelization of the water and diversion of the water, and so the water, nothing's going to stop the water from coming up over the wall and flooding that area out, but it wouldn't, you know, it's in the decision, and you have it. So that's where it rests in your hands to decide what's best to do. If you vote to issue an order, the enforcement order goes away. And I'm not sure what happens if you vote to deny it. I think that enforcement order stays intact.
Well, because it's still.
Because there's not a comprehensive plan, right? When you issue, you now have a comprehensive plan to deal with the property and the site, but if you don't issue anything, I don't see why the enforcement order would go away.
Right, so you still maintain control in the respect that you're supposed to comply with what you have in the enforcement order, which is do nothing on the property, put erosion controls in, submit a restoration plan. And then, I mean, I think too, the denial is not saying you can't do anything on that property. You know, you've already offered up that you want to see something that meets the requirements of the regulations and the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw by basically going up and not filling the property. So it's not that no project can happen there, it's just this particular project as proposed is what you're looking at. So.
Well, my personal feeling is that this individual has gone so far over the top that if we condition it, I think the conditions, many of them may be ignored, period. And so, I would prefer to see it denied and let them do what they will and keep the enforcement order for putting in the fill that's already there. And if he needs to go and see if he can get somebody else in the state to agree with him, good luck, because I think it's so far over the top, I don't think it will happen.
Doug?
Yeah, again, this weekend.
Sure.
So, there was a whole session on, the one I was interested in the most was coastal land subject to flooding and what to do about this. So it's a statewide issue, and I can tell that the short conclusion of this whole thing is they do want us to look at the impacts of redirecting water. The case study was like almost exactly like this. So it was a new house going up, and a solid foundation was not what they wanted to see. So I can say that DEP and CZM want to see houses go up on piers and not have solid foundations with fill around the lot. For exactly the reason why this was, what would happen, is what the butters' concerns was, that it's going to redirect, it's going to change the drainage pattern to a negative impact on abutting properties. So what it does is somewhat negate this effort of engineers being able to show, which you can show with the drainage calculations, that once you catch the roof water, there's a net runoff of zero difference, so you can prove that by calculating. But that's not the end of the story. So the fact that the water has been redirected into other directions is something we're supposed to be looking at. And they felt strongly that that's, their own recommendations would be exactly what we're proposing. What we asked them to do is say, go up on piles. We wouldn't have to have this discussion in it's much impervious areas, parking driveways and things like that. In my opinion, the plan clearly shows that there would be an impact on at least one of the properties just by their own design. That the northwestern property owned by the McDonald's was clearly going to pond water. So that's by their own plan. So to me, it's that the plan, we could say that the applicant has not shown that there's not going to be a negative impact onto the abutting properties. And I think that the plan clearly shows that. So in the case of an appeal, you would have to argue that plan does show that, and that you would have to make that same argument that this plan doesn't show an impact, and someone at the DEP would have to buy that. But I've been through an appeal process myself. I've had projects appealed, but it was on things that could be determined by survey. So that's a different situation. This is subjective. So, to me, the plan is faulty. It's deficient. It doesn't, that plan as proposed would, in my opinion, absolutely cause an impact on the abutters. So I would prefer to deny it after having said all that mouthful.
Okay.
I feel as though we're in a catch-22 here, I want to deny it. Amy did write up some really good orders that really address the foundation, the retaining walls, the fill, and the violation. But will he go by them? So.
Oh, but will he go by whatever the state determines? I think we run that same.
Well, no, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So which way do we want to go? I mean, these orders are good. If we had somebody we knew, okay, you're going to abide by them, and you're going to do what we have asked you to do. I like feeling as though the local bylaws are being considered. When this goes to the state, if we deny it, they won't look at the local bylaws. They're strictly looking at this. So I'm whatever the majority wants. I mean, this is a nightmare project as far as I'm concerned.
Which local bylaw are you, or is
Well,
that one that you're concerned
any-
about? Because I hadn't considered that, so I'm just.
But the state doesn't even look at our bylaw. Like, if you appeal to the
Right, but I'm
state,
wondering, what is the?
Oh, I'm not talking any specific,
Okay.
I just like feeling that local control.
Yeah.
You know? And we do, to some degree, lose it if we didn't, if we issue orders, okay? And he appeals the orders because he doesn't like them. And then the state comes down and here's our side and his side. I feel if you gave orders, they kind of look at them a little, even though they'll have superseding orders, where if we don't give any orders, it's just a total denial. They're just, I don't know. I just want to make sure this project gets done right. I don't want to see the foundation, I don't want to see the fill.
Is there, like, the way we've done on some other projects, and I always get the words wrong, you know me, like, when somebody gives us money to hold on to while we make sure that they're
Escrow.
Here we go.
Escrow.
That word. Is there any element of that we could impose with regards to, if we're concerned that he's not gonna follow some of the order of conditions that we have, we're just in general concerned, could we do an escrow?
an honesty escrow. Anyone would think, well, yeah, I mean, because it's.
I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, no, we're not making funny, it's just, it's a hard situation.
But maybe there's a place for that. I mean, we have,
Well, I mean, on bigger projects, there's a
Yeah,
requirement to post
a
a bond
development,
or
yeah.
something like that.
well, maybe
For a road
that's what this
project.
guy's got to do here. I mean, he's just been a person that
Performance
has,
guarantee,
yeah.
I think that might be what they call it.
Like, fine, let's not deny it because we're concerned, or maybe you don't deny it because we want some element of, to Penny's point, which I sympathize, I can empathize with that. And we're not saying there shouldn't be a house there, we're just saying we don't want these 4 or 5 things in place. And
Exactly,
Like-
that are gonna make the water shoot
Right.
off. I just want everything to flow as Mother Nature wants to go.
But if he was to come to us and say, originally, sure, I agree with those 4 or 5 things,
We wouldn't be here
we
today.
wouldn't be here, but, like, is there this performance?
Performance bond, basically, yeah.
It just seems like no matter how we deal with this, it's going to be a problem. No matter- If you condition it and say, but we're only going to condition driven piles or whatever, he can certainly appeal that.
He can appeal it no matter what.
Right.
Okay.
Do you have any idea where the standing is? Because on 23 Oceanside, the abutters appealed the order. So we issued an order with conditions to try to limit the project, so something, we took
And then the
that,
abutters appealed our,
they appealed that, and I
Right.
don't know where that stands. Do you have, did we
Well,
have-
it's a kind of a different situation, but we have not seen the findings from that field yet.
Okay, because I was just interested in how DEP looked at it and reacted. Because I guess, I mean, the orders are what we would prefer to see. They're essentially a denial of the project, because what he wants to do is build a full foundation and fill in, and a new garage and everything like that. We're saying you can't do any of that. In the orders, you said you could do this house if you don't build what you said you wanted to build. Instead, you're gonna put it on piles, and I think we would have to have him come back with a pile plan that we'd have to prove, so the footings and everything.
But
like
it's
that.
not a denial, because the difference with a denial is you can take it just as it's proposed and bring it to the state, and I'm not saying this will happen, and get that approved. When you
Yes.
condition it and approve it in a different way, that's a different kind of appeal. You didn't deny the project and now having the project reconsidered by the state the way you don't want it.
Right, do you just want to look
Yeah, but
at what the
It's a different animal.
But you could appeal the condition.
Oh, no, you can, but it's a different,
And say, hey, they conditioned this unreasonably, and I want to build.
but it's a very
and still
different
get it
than
back to where-
going with the same project and coming back and saying, yeah, get superseding order, I'm building what you didn't want.
Right, but I think though that if we lay out just what we think we want to see there, and we give reason to why we think it's important that it, say, go up, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's clearly stated, in that way, you know, I think, I don't know, I haven't been involved in a ton of appeals, honestly, I really haven't, but from the message that I'm getting from the regulators is that we have a stronger position conditioning a project if we can. And if they don't like it, but we have a good reason, and we can stand behind why we're conditioning it, then I think that they are saying that's the better way to go. But I mean, I see what you're saying too, though, that we have a pretty non-compliant applicant, and I mean, a permit is like, okay, got a permit to go, whereas a denial, there's no mistake. No, we don't want you to do that, you know what I mean? Because you could just, people don't read our permits, let's face it, folks, right? You know what I mean? They don't get to that last page.
And then
That's where the trouble's
once it's built and it's not compliant and they violate all
that's
things,
what scares
how often
me.
do we get anything tear down, start over?
Well,
Well, it becomes very
We are,
complicated.
that's right.
And I
Very
think,
complicated.
And then,
Yeah.
and then another one goes way back, though, is Herringbrook Meadows, and we decided to condition it with all these things. They appealed it, and the thing wound up in a huge case that we really didn't get what we wanted.
Nope.
Well, because it's just like the other side of the coin on the denial is, it's just the way you present it. So we're saying the same thing, it's just
Right.
one's got the deny stamp and one has an approved stamp, but
we're playing chess a little bit with
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
might happen. And to me, it's like, if we deny it, we're saying we're not going to see any activity on that site until this case is solved. So he's going to have to appeal it, go to the state, and they're going to have to hear it. And from what I heard from the state, and I asked him, so you can have our back on that. You know, these exact kind of situations that you just talked about, we have, and we're either going to condition or deny these things, you know, what's going to happen in the appeal process. Of course, they can't guarantee what's going to happen
No.
in Superior Court, but, you know, certainly what I heard this weekend is that DEP's saying, no, they don't want projects like this. They don't want the fill, they don't want the solid foundations. This exact situation.
right, and
And then again, we're back to playing chess on which is the best way to do it. But to me, we drive by, there should be no activity on the site. If there's a condition, there's going to be activity on the site, and things are going to start going up, and we're going to say, like, I thought they were going to be wooden piers, and what we're seeing is concrete, and then there's going to, I just feel like you're going to end up like you are in
No piers.
Hummerock, or whatever that one was, where you got the what is it, the sanity wall or something?
Yeah.
That's out there?
Well, this is,
And
this
we
isn't,
can't get rid of it.
it's not in a velocity zone, so it could be on concrete piers, it could have spread footings. There's a whole bunch of things that he could do at that location that can't happen
Right.
in a V zone. But anything where water can flow through,
Well, we even asked him about panels, and he didn't want to do panels on the foundation, but breakaways. I
Right.
just want water when there's a storm, it can go
Yeah.
and not be shooting off to everyone else's yard. They've got enough coming in.
well, we got enough people here. I'll make a motion for deny, give me a motion for denial.
Okay, I make a motion for a denial.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a second. So how many people want to deny this project? Here we go.
what was the vote?
Oh,
Denied.
I think it was unanimous.
not,
Unanimous.
one,
Oh,
two,
unanimous?
three, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
6 Ts, okay.
But just to, so the enforcement order is still in place.
Will still be in
Yeah.
effect.
But if you haven't, not you haven't put in the silt sod, can we do another enforcement order?
Right, so I'm glad you brought that up, Jen,
Oh,
actually.
sure.
There you go.
Thought about it.
Should we
Make this meeting go
renew
5 minutes longer, will you?
the intention of the enforcement order and specifically call out the erosion control? Sign a brand new
Yes.
version?
Yes.
And
Yes.
would you like to assess a second penalty
Yes.
for not
Yes.
following direction.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think you have to get the flavor anymore, Amy.
Okay, so we got that, and the penalty shall be based on, give me a little direction.
Well, you've got the existing 2,100, which
Yeah.
we support, and I would add another, I'd say 1,000, but that might be a little high.
Why?
Every day.
Why?
Another 1,000 on top.
We're getting storms, and that,
I think to
Garbage
your point,
is
every day
flowing.
since the time that he agreed to it.
well, here's the thing too, can I ask? Can he add to the original every day he doesn't pay? I mean, basically, he's been thumbing out his nose at us. Isn't there, did that violation, did the fine say you're supposed to pay it today?
No.
Or you're
So
supposed to pay
the
it
fine
in 10
is
years?
actually, it's a citation through the Scituate Police Department, and they give him 30 days to pay, and I spoke to them a couple weeks ago, and they were giving him his, it's like a parking ticket, right?
Yeah.
They were giving him his second notice because he hadn't paid. But I know that he's interested in the fee because he's been asking Jim Boudreau about it. So he was, and even today, Jim said that there was a question, he thought maybe Jim told him he didn't have to pay it, which was false. So that came from Paul Miradito. So there's a lot of misinformation going around apparently. That's why I think it might be prudent to reissue, and if you want to knock it home, potentially.
How many days since that was issued? We've gone over the 30, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We've
no,
gone
that's
over
what-
the 30, it was issued on like January 11th or something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah,
I have it.
Almost 60, yeah.
It's almost 60.
almost 6 days, next Monday.
No, I'm sorry, January 9th. But the erosion control, we had given them from February 11th to the 15th.
Do we have anything stipulated, like it's $50 a day or?
300 a day. But I mean,
Okay.
I think, the thing is that, I think you need to have a little bit of discretion with it too.
So put it out there, hit them with all of it, you can, they're not gonna pay anything that we don't ask for.
I think we've had lots of discretion. We have 0 action since January 9th. Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Well,
I
this
think you
is
put
going
it
to
out
end up
there.
in Hingham District Court, just
Well,
so you know.
that's
That's fine.
Okay.
Maybe that's
And it
what
may end up
has
being
to.
settled for a little less than 300 a day on top of everything, but
Okay,
Gotta
so
make the
300 a
point.
day from the 15th?
Yep.
Okay. To today, and we're going to re-sign it today and insert that? Okay.
and I hope some other people that, we
Well,
don't
I
have a
mean-
lot that do stuff like this, but those who do, maybe they'll start hearing that we're a little fed up with it.
Right, well, but if you do 300 a day till today, that's going to be one number, but then it's,
300 a day beyond.
and then, I know, so I'll talk to town council and figure out
Okay.
what to do about it, but I get what you're saying.
Too much.
All right.
But yeah, we're not happy with it.
18 Evangeline Drive,
Oh, we're not done yet.
I make a motion, we accept the orders as written for 18 Evangeline.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
21 Franklin Street,
I make a motion, we accept the orders as written for 21 Franklin Street, as written.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
It's late, and I don't want to keep dragging this out. We got a great meeting, Jen and I, with the trails folks, and we've got some rules and things. I think rather than talk about them tonight, we'll get them out to you guys and see if we can adopt that, so that we can keep moving forward.
Is it worth talking about your favorite topic just a little bit?
Perry doors?
Yeah. Just like the idea of the,
All right.
do you want me to say?
Yeah,
You're
go ahead.
tired?
No, it's fine.
He's exhausted.
So I think, one of the things that kind of came up in the meeting was there is definitely a difference in terms of some people who are more leave it exactly as it is, touch nothing, versus the idea of education and involvement and exposure. And perhaps not wanting to make a black and white decision about it off the bat. And by virtue, one way perhaps around that is the idea of approaching things on a case-by-case basis with utilizing the minor activity permits. So an individual would have to file a permit process, which would also enable us to know everything that's happening. So you want to put a bench in the driftway? Let's see a permit. You want to put a ferry door? Let's see a permit. And there would be a monetary tie to that, so that we can still theoretically deny everything or nothing, but enabling us to have a better visual into what people want to see, and saying that could be a good idea or that's not a fit for us.
I think that
You get a little control
Yeah,
that way.
and the part is that we do want to encourage folks to use the property. And, you know, we have this issue about dogs, and how do we deal with dogs? You know, we had someone that come in that wanted to paint a lot of stones along the trail. We thought that was too permanent, and they couldn't be washed away. But this more recent one is an educational piece that involves the kids. They say they can remove it, so to Jen's point, you know, someone could come in, make a presentation, here's what we'd like to do, if we find that it's not intrusive. And I...
May I?
Sure.
Okay, this is my feeling, and I really feel very strongly about it. I have nothing against fairies. You want to do it educational. I don't understand what fairies have to do with Mother Nature. Educational, teach them the plants, pine cones, go collect salamanders. You could have a ball with kids out there doing natural nature. That's what they should be learning. I have a great issue with bringing man into nature that way, making fairy doors. There is so many educational benefits out there of nature. That's what they should be out there for, not for fairies. I feel very strong.
Well, and I think this would enable this person, the next individual to come and present, and you to say that, and them to say, okay, this is how I would do it differently, so that we're not necessarily, I don't love the fairy doors either, but I actually haven't spoken with this person and heard if there's like maybe a smaller approach, or if there's like a non-invasive idea or something like that. It just enables us to not have like I don't know, it gives us a little wiggle room.
You know, when we talked about this, Penny, some of the discussion we came up with in terms of people using the trails. There's people that think that no one should even walk in the woods, that they should be totally undisturbed. You know, we have walkers, people want to use mountain bikes. We draw a line somewhere between, sort of a passive use and a more aggressive use of the property. So we don't want motorcycles, or we don't want four-wheelers. Maybe we'll allow horses on some, mountain bikes on some properties. So, we say no alcohol, no drugs. Probably some of that's not really followed, but certainly if we found that there was a lot more abuse of the property, we'd clamp down a little bit harder. And people are changing in how they want to see some of this, where there's just so much more activities are out there. I played Santa for a bunch of years. Now I have to know about Elf on a Shelf, I mean, things are changing, and if you want to we have concerns about dogs and how they create a problem there, but an awful lot of people that are walking are bringing their dog. And so we have to accommodate some of those pieces. I'm not opposed to hearing someone out on some of those parts. If it's going to be permanent, I'm with you. I don't want people going in and lopping off limbs and putting up stuff in our properties without our permission. I mean, we're the ones that are supposed to be looking over this property. But by the same token, if you have people that are trying to encourage participation and use, I think at least we may want to listen to some of those and say, can we do this in a spot, you know? Not every place, do we want to allow people to use geocaches?
They just do that, they don't.
Don't even ask.
Permission.
I just think nature is out there and they should be out there for nature. And, you know, you can bring anyone in you want. I'm a real firm believer. I go along with what all the national parks have done. You take nothing, you leave nothing, and you take nothing. You go enjoy nature. And education, Barry Dawes is not education. Education is learning, collect salamanders, see if you can find a toad, see if you can find a lily pad in the water, see if you can find this leaf, see if you can find a pine cone. There is so much out there for children to do without us bringing man-made stuff in. And I guess I'm a purist when it comes to the woods. I really feel as though you need to enjoy nature and maybe change, times have changed, everybody's got their phone, everybody's got this and that. Maybe it's time, let's go back to nature. This is one spot where we don't do all that stuff. We do nature. And that's, I just feel so strongly about bringing any man-made things, bringing them out there.
And I do get that, but unfortunately, just like these access roads and trails and parking, we have to put up gates, we have to put up signs, we have to put up kiosks. It's too bad, I mean, but we have to do those things just to protect these properties. And they're gonna get used differently. I mean, the Driftway needs a lot of attention because of the amount of use it gets.
Well, use.
Speaking of.
What's being debated here, you're having two different, you don't want ferry doors. Frank's saying they should have a hearing. You can have a hearing and vote no.
Yeah,
and
no, I'm
not have
just
ferry
saying,
doors.
I thought, obviously mistakenly, I thought when the Greystones came in, we had made a decision at that point in time that nothing, it's all or nothing. And I'm sorry, you can't let one group in and not another group, because then you're gonna have people pitting against each other.
I think you look at the merits and you also look at whether it's a permanent alteration or whether it's something that's temporary. My understanding is that these will be put up and then taken down. I don't think we should be debating this tonight. I think we either decide, do we want to hear what they have to say, and we have to take stuff on a case-by-case basis. And people are always going to come and ask us, can we have a road race, or can we do something else in here? Do we want to do firewood eventually? Well, you know, there's going to be those kind of questions, and that's what we have to.
I just think it's a shame. That's just me. I think it's a shame to start messing with nature. We've messed enough. That's why we have animals everywhere. They don't have a home. I just don't want any more man-made stuff out there. But, like I said.
So, Mr. Chair, where do we go from here?
I think it would be a good idea to have it open for, let them make presentations. We don't have to say yes to anything.
All right, well, the parameter on that should be, though, when we have an agenda that's got less than,
Yeah.
I mean, tonight we had like
Yes.
15 hearings, so.
Right.
When we have a light agenda, we'll call them up and
Who
ask.
sets up the agenda?
Not me.
You got the book.
Oh, yeah, it'll never be
All right.
That's okay. We'll
Good
bring
enough.
them in.
All right, do we have anything else?
No.
Good.
Right answer.
I like a motion.
Oh, no.
Wait a minute.
Oh, actually,
Partial CFC?
well, all right, this one can be quick. Okay, so 14 Kimberly has been floating around for a while. It's a single-family home it's down a common driveway, or it's off the end of Kimberly, cul-de-sac Schwartz.
Yeah.
Sold off a lot, right?
Yeah, I went there, I looked at it.
Yeah, okay, well, so the house is up, it's wants to, it's gonna be occupied soon, they want a partial CFC, but they're clearly not
We need some,
done.
we need some
So we
money.
need- So if you want, we can issue it, but we need to decide on an escrow amount.
Yeah,
There are some pretty significant tasks to still be done.
yes. And I think we have to evaluate those and look at it and come up with a real,
Good figure.
a good figure so that they,
Yeah, well, so right now they have a letter, so that they're gonna be able to get what they want as far as sale and occupancy, I believe, but they really are pressing for this partial. So, I mean, if you wanna throw a number at it, I'm not inclined to wanna do that, but we could come up with a number of, say, $10,000 or $15,000.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's really, it's a guesstimate, I mean, certain things are left.
that's what I'm saying, we have to, let's take a look at the things that,
Driveway, okay, so then we're not gonna issue it. Or we can vote on it and we can talk about it, but then that number would not be voted on it.
right.
It would just be like.
I don't want to say, no, we have
Yeah.
to, we'll decide on the number based on the work that has to,
And then vote on that.
yeah,
Okay, so then we're not issuing it, okay.
fine.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn, finish, leave.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Negative.